Here. It's nice to see a full house in the Washington City Council chambers. It's Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, and we are here for our regular meeting. As always, our meetings are broadcast live on washingtoncity.org/meetings. We've got a good agenda for our meeting this evening, but before we start, is Michael Cruz from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in the audience by chance? I didn't see him, so I've asked Councilwoman Kim Casperson to open this meeting with prayer. Amen. Thank you, Councilwoman. With all of the police officers and new police officers and family here tonight, I felt it only fitting to invite the fire chief to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Perfect. Please stand. Join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I wonder if sometimes we just kind of take for granted that we start these meetings with prayer and the pledge. I think it's entirely appropriate for public service to recognize God and country. So thank you for being here. We're going to do the best stuff at the beginning of the meeting, and then we'll do the rest of it. Council, I want to let you know that we do need to go to closed session only for pending or potential litigation. So I'd look to you to make a motion to approve the agenda with that item.
Mayor, I can make a motion to approve our regular city council meeting for May 10th, including a closed session.
I have a motion by Councilman Ivey, second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Just a few announcements. First of all, on behalf of myself and the council, we want to thank the community and everyone who assisted with the Cotton Days events. They were wonderful. We had a number of great events and a lot of community participation, and it really reminds us, why we love living in this area among so many other reasons. And then also just for the service, especially with PD and that sacrifice you made to so that the Ironman 70.3 North American Championship could go off without hitch. I know that's early mornings and long days and hours that you're not usually working. So thank you for that. A few more just brief announcements. Many of you know the superintendent of schools, Larry Bergeson. His retirement, and this is mainly for you, council, will be Friday. A retirement open house will be held on Friday, May 19th from about 2 until 3:30 p.m. at the Washington County School District building. And so they sent an invitation over to us. If you're available, I'm sure he'd love to see you, and you can wish him well. For all you men in the audience, Mother's Day is Sunday, May 14th. And for those of you who like to golf, the Mayor's Cup is on June 5th. I think there's still a few spots open in that scramble. I will not be golfing, but I'll be there enjoying everybody there. The city has a couple of teams, so council, if you could let me know within the next couple of days if you have an interest in golfing, and we'll make sure you get on those teams, and then we'll stack them with whoever else we can find.
We're all signed up over here.
You're already signed up.
Already?
I am too.
I'll just drive my cart.
All right. And then lastly, I've got a commitment with the county commissioners this evening, so I will be leaving after agenda item number 6, and I will turn the meeting over to Councilman Ivy, who serves as Mayor Pro Tem when I'm absent. Council, anything I missed on announcements? Item 3, any declarations of abstentions and/or conflicts? Seeing none.
Sorry, Mayor, really quick. I was looking for the item number 10. And well, 10A, 9A are both just within like a quarter mile of my house. So just no financial gain or anything there. Just wanted to make that aware.
Thank you, Councilman. Duly noted. Okay, let's move on to item number 4, which is oath of office. This is the introduction and oath of office for 4 new police officers. And I'm going to say each of your names and ask you to come forward. And then I'll invite Chief Williams to come forward and administer the oath of office. Dan Hayes, if you come forward. Dan is a veteran in this community with police force and a recent graduate of, as I understand, of Utah Tech University. I'm glad you chose the right department to come to, Dan. Caleb Montez, he is a recent graduate of the Academy and is it 12 Bravo or 12 Bravo military veteran. We feel very fortunate to have him on join the force. These other 2 we already know. They just get better uniforms now. I'm going to invite Alex Pedra to come up. He's changed from the brown and the green to the dark blue. And this is a family legacy for this family, and be involved in law enforcement. And we all know our friend Dallin Tanner, who we understand that some of the best officers come up through code enforcement. Appreciate each of you guys. And Chief Williams, if you'll come forward now and make it official.
Mayor, Council, thank you for this opportunity and letting us share this experience with you and letting us showcase some of our new hires. And we're grateful for them and for their willingness to serve our community. The success of these men is not going to come on their own backs, but from those that support them, their families, their loved ones. And we're grateful that they're here as well. So we will go ahead with the oath of office. Raise your right hand to square. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Utah. I do also solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the laws and ordinances of Washington City. And I will discharge the duties of police officer with fidelity. Congratulations. So these badges, if you look at them, they're a little bit different. So I'm holding our officer badge, which all these guys are now officers. But for our military, we do a veteran badge. So it's a little bit different. That top ribbon does read veteran, and then depending on which service, what branch of the military they served in, will be that seal. And then that bottom rocker will also state that branch as well. So Caleb will be pinned with a veteran badge to represent his service in the military. Those members that are pinning their badges on, if they want to come up. Take pictures. You can come up and get close if you'd like.
We might need him up here, Chief. I mean, this always.
Ladies and gentlemen, Washington City's finest right here.
Chief, if I might, if you're a family member of or a close friend of one of these new officers, would you please stand and be recognized? Okay, now if you'll sit down, and if you are current or former law enforcement who's going to serve with these men, would you please stand and be recognized? Or raise your hand and be recognized. It's just amazing the kind of support that it takes. It's a family, it's a brotherhood, it's a community, really. We're going to do some pictures here in just a minute. But Chief, do you have anything else to say before we let these new officers just share a few thoughts with us?
Thank you.
Officer Hayes, would you come up and just tell the council and those in attendance what this means to you to join this department at this stage in your career?
So I started my career in Hurricane after having interest in Washington City, and that didn't quite work out at the time. I went over to the university and met a couple of the guys, and then a couple of the guys from Hurricane came over here. And so it's definitely been on my radar since I finished my degree, and I'm just really excited to be a part of the department, and everybody that I've met's been awesome. And so I'm just super pumped.
Well, we feel fortunate to have you, and you're going to fit right in and add to this culture that sets this department apart. Welcome, officer. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Officer Montez, this isn't the first time you've worn a uniform. It's a little different than the one you wore last, but tell us what this means to you and what it means to serve your country and your community.
Yeah, it means a lot. I'm very honored to be here. I want to thank the department for giving me the opportunity. It does mean a lot. I don't even know how to put it into words, to be honest. I'm super excited to be here. I heard Washington was the best department in Utah, so
You heard right.
I'm just honored to be here and work with the best department, and everybody in the department. So thank you guys very much.
Officer Piedra, this is a new role for you.
Yes, it is.
Talk about how that change came about and what this opportunity means to you.
So how it came about was about, I'm 24 now, but I was about 19 years old. I did about one semester of college and I realized real quick that I don't like college, but, and so I was kind of just figuring stuff out, like seeing what I want to do, what I kind of want to go for. And, I have my brother to thank for that because he directed me in a path where I took interest in real quick. And so since then, I've just been patiently waiting till I turned 21. And then, I was doing what I can, applying for different agencies. And I'm grateful that Washington City Police Department gave me this opportunity here, gave me a shot here, after applying for like 4 other agencies, and so
Well, we feel fortunate, and we recognize also that you've served in our animal control department for a period of time already. So,
yeah,
so they gotta see and know what you're all about.
exactly. But I'm really excited to start with the department.
Well, we welcome you.
Thank you.
Officer Tanner, you've come over from code enforcement.
Yep.
Tell us about that and what this opportunity means to you.
Well, yeah, I originally applied for code enforcement, and I was honest with my board that was interviewing me that I had plans to become in law enforcement. So, with their support, they let me do that to start, and then put me through the academy. So it's been a great opportunity, and decided to start this new leg of the career. So,
How long have you been with Washington City now?
Washington City, I think just over 2 years, counting code enforcement.
I'm going to ask you one more question. What's the best piece of advice about the job that you've gotten so far?
Be willing to learn, for sure. That's the biggest thing. Everyone does things different, so if you learn from everyone, you'll get the best of everything. So,
Love it. We're fortunate to have you. Welcome.
thank you.
Chief, how do you want to do pictures?
With the camera.
Okay, we'll do it with the camera. Do we want to let's do officers and family first, and then council and other officers will join?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So 4 officers come up in the middle, family come up, gather around, and then next time we'll invite the officers and councils to join.
I'll try to be nice. I'm just being nice. I'm just excited.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Probably gonna do it.
I have to learn my place.
Any failures, we're blaming you.
I remember talking to you, right? About you going to this. It's awesome.
And I'll call for a motion to adjourn. No, I'm just kidding. As much as we love having law enforcement and family in here, it's all downhill from this point, so you don't have to stay. The best of the meeting is behind us. Although it is a pretty good budget we've got to discuss tonight. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the consent agenda for the approval of minutes from city council meetings of 4/26/23 and the board audit report of April 2023. Call for a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as outlined on our agenda.
Have a motion by Councilman Martinson.
Second.
Second by Councilman Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We're on to item number 6. By raise of hand in the audience, who is here for the public hearing in regards to the budget? Is anyone here to discuss the budget other than the council? I know you've read it like 3 or 4 times, Councilman. Okay. So I am going to forego some of the guidelines that I typically share before a public hearing. But I will say, as we move into item number 6A, which is a public hearing to consider adopting the Washington City 2023 to 2024 fiscal year budget, that this has been quite a process. City budgets run on a fiscal year which starts July 1 and goes through June 30, while city manager and staff department heads are constantly working on their budgets and preparing those. Council's direction comes in about the first of the calendar year. It starts with the retreat, high-level priorities and feedback that's continuous from this elected leadership body. The city manager then works very closely with Brian Brown, who's our finance director, and with department heads to meet the objectives of the council. They take a lot of the great things that we've done historically and project out for the upcoming year on what the upcoming needs will be for the community. It's really quite the process. I think it's always an ongoing process. And then one of the most important duties of this council is to approve the budget, right? They set the direction and approve the budget, and then they oversee the discharge of that budget throughout the year. So in fact, we will see Brian here at least on a quarterly basis to give us updates on how the discharge of this approved budget goes. At this stage, at our last council meeting, the tentative budget was approved unanimously. Part of the process is then to hold a public hearing, which I will open here momentarily. After the public hearing, you'll see the council have a discussion in open meeting on some of their feedback for staff. And then the staff will take that feedback and they will present to the council in 2 weeks of what would be considered a final budget to approve, which is final only in the sense that the state requires us to pass a balanced budget, but it also means that this council can amend the budget throughout the year as necessary. So it's quite the process. That's a mouthful to now get to the point to say, if anyone is here to speak to item 6A, which is a public hearing regarding the 2023-2024 fiscal year budget, I'll open the floor for public comment now. And seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. And just for those in attendance, Washington City conducts the budget in a very transparent manner. So if you ever want to see on a high level or dig deeper into the budget, get onto washingtoncity.org. And Brian, what do they call it? The financial dashboard? Or what is it called there? Under washingtoncity.org, just search for budget and you'll be able to see all of that. Council, the time is now yours to discuss and deliberate on the budget. Brian is here. I know he responded to some of your inquiries from last meeting. The manager's here. I see several of the department heads and treasurer here in attendance. All happy to respond to your questions and the conversation, to be part of it as you see fit.
Well, Mayor, I think I'd just start off by saying that the little field trip that we took, we went down to fire station in the fields and went to the old school gym and then up to the community center. And being able to see things in person helps a lot with perspective and in making important decisions. And, I certainly have some things that that's cleared up as we've had our discussions about the agenda, or about the annual budget, and some things that are still in process of being worked out. But the thing I like is that the council's never pressured or pushed, that we always have plenty of time that we need to make the decision, because as you said, Mayor, this is the most important thing we do as council members is administer the citizens' money. So I appreciate that. And if you don't mind, Mayor, can I just jump in on my list? I know that everyone probably has things.
This is the council's time to discuss.
So I just have a couple of items that I've narrowed down to, just some things that I'd share with the council, because we do all of our business in a public meeting. We went down and we looked at Station 62, which is on Washington Dam Road. It's a house that's been there since the early 2000s. And as we understand it, as the city has grown, it's become necessary to house firefighters there 24 hours a day. When it was originally built, it was just meant to have part-time firefighters or volunteers there. What my thought was after we looked at the firehouse and trying to look at it holistically, I see a house there that's still in good shape, doing good work. I do know that there's some specific needs, like there needs to be sprinklers installed to meet code, and there has to be some adequate sleeping arrangements. But when I look at, and I know this is a placeholder, it's not an exact number, but $5,200,000 for that, considering that you can build a new firehouse for $3.6, $3.8, something like that, depending on what you build. I think that I'd be more inclined to maybe have some further conversation done with maybe some contractors and some options at our guidance to be able to go out and say, what if we were to build on to that south side and extend a room out? Would that be adequate? Would that work? And of course, we want our police and firefighters to have the best and be treated the best, but we also want to make sure that when we spend our money that it's diligent on our part. But what I was thinking is that by adding a sprinkling system to the upstairs and then doing some improvements and possibly building a room onto that south end, in just very rough estimation, I think that we could have enough to bring that house in line and still use the balance of that money to build a future firehouse in the Stuckey Farms area on property that we already have. Now, that's just my thought on that. And Mayor, did you want me to kind of go down the list, or you want me to stop on that one?
I think if you're okay, Councilman,
Please.
Can we maybe stay on this one for just a minute, and then we'll, if you're okay with that.
So I'll just give my thoughts on that. I think I'm kind of in line with you, but not all the way. I don't, and I like the input of saying, should we remodel? But like you said, if it's going to cost more to remodel than just tear the whole thing down, I'd rather just tear the whole thing down and build it like we need it. The one thing that I caught from today's field trip was that it was a good location, but the property's small. I'm more worried about the amount of funds that we potentially have to spend on our whole budget. I've mentioned the budget is extremely big compared to, and it's just because we're a growing city, right? We're a growing city, we have more funds to spend because we have more needs and more things we need to adhere to make the city great. But I'm concerned about spending the $5.2 million on that station. Like I said, is there a way to retrofit it? Is there another land that's really close, that's not too far away, that works to build a new one? You mentioned the Stookie Farm one, that makes sense too, but I think we need that one in the future anyways. So we'd have to do something with this one too. So I think that's where I'm like, does it make sense to go build Stookie Farms right now? But either way, we got to still address our issues at 62. But we also have the fire station off Washington Parkway we have to build in the near future. And so I think Manager Red said it, we don't want to get behind because we've been in that position where we're behind, but also we want to be fiscally responsible and not spend too much on I just don't want to throw money away. And I feel like we might, I don't know. I'm concerned we might do that, trying to retrofit 62. But is there going to be a need for 62 as it is today, but have a fire station relatively close that work too? Like, do we need two in that general area? Because it is kind of the central of our city, because we're really elongated. So that's my question. The thing that I would propose for the budget is that we put in some money to understand more of another site. Like, should we have some design money for the remodel, or design money to understand a site, or looking for another site, but maybe not put the whole 5.2 in this year, but you put in some money to kind of answer some of these questions. And maybe I'm just behind too on understanding that, but I just think 5.2 for this year's budget maybe not be what we should do right now. But that's my thoughts.
Mayor?
Yeah, nobody gets off free on this discussion,
Okay.
so.
So I'm kind of having those same kind of feelings. One thing I learned today is the living arrangements there are not adequate for our firefighters. But I have some of these same concerns. I think we maybe ought to, take a look at doing more of like a minor addition to that building, possibly focusing on living area, for $500,000 or something like that, and then put the rest of that money towards an additional fire station. That's kind of what I'm looking at. I'd like to maybe take a look at some options in that direction. So anyway.
Good comments. If you want to.
Well, it definitely needs to be brought up to code. We need to put the sprinklers in, and that needs to, we need to do something there just so that it's relevant. But yeah, I'm kind of in line with that, with how do we spend the minimal amount of money on this one and make it livable, make it suitable, make it somewhere where I would want to spend the time that they spend there.
Well, and I appreciate that comment, and I'll come to you here in just a sec. One of the things that we understand is that 62 is in need of some upgrades. And I think whatever upgrades those happen, they need to be substantial enough that it gives us some life out of that station, because we're not only looking at the station that Councilman Ivey mentioned in Stookie, but we also have property in Santa Hills. So we've got 61, we've got 64. We've kind of got to determine how do we're looking at 5 within a relatively short period of time. So I think this is, good discussion.
So Mayor, I just one comment on, and it's more of a question that I don't need answered today, but is there an option to get the additional land we need to build the station we need on that site? Because there was
On the dam road you're
on the-
talking?
on the dam road, like not, I just don't know.
It's a fair
So-
question. I thought that too when we were down there.
So, and I don't think we need to discuss it. I just want to bring it up to staff. Maybe we might need to look at that to see. If we're going to put in the money, don't put in, and we don't do it right, then are we hurting ourselves again?
Yeah, we want,
So do
because
we-
it wasn't maybe done as well as it could have been the first time.
Or the needs were just different at that time, and we've grown, and now we have
Mhm.
full-time staff, and so it's just a different need. But again, I think Chief would have to correct me if I was wrong. I think he said they wanted it bigger then and didn't get it, and so I don't know if we can even have that option, but
That's
Just-
what I was thinking about, is if we put all this money into it, and then just down the road, we have to go back and, put more money into it, or, would it just be better just to do it how it would meet the needs that we need now, rather than I just don't want to waste money that's going to hold us over until to a future date. I wonder if it would be better just to do it the way that it would be most, I don't know.
I
Like
wonder. Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Go
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if we should see if there's a piece of property within a quarter mile or half a mile of that area that we could spend that money and build the fire station that we need right there. And then, like I said earlier, repurpose that building for something else. I mean, my experience has been just in the business that I'm in is sometimes it's better to, rather than putting money into something and building it and it's not exactly what you want, it's better to leave it as is, repurpose it and build something brand new. Better bang for the buck, so I think we could look at some options, and then maybe the best option is to tear that one down and build a new one. I don't know, but I'd like to at least, look at some different options, so.
Manager, jump in.
Yeah, I just make two comments. Number one, I agree with the mayor. This isn't our one shot at this, right? I feel a lot of support from the council to make sure it's done to a standard that's going to be adequate for the next 20 years plus, 40 years, 50 years. And so with that in mind, is there something you're comfortable with at this point, or would you just rather we go back to the drawing board and bring it back? Because again, it's not a year that we have to wait. We can bring it back as soon as we have some answers to your questions. Just let me know what you'd like to do with the budget as it stands now, and we're happy to do that, and then look at it. I feel a lot of support for the fire department and having adequate facilities for them, but it sounds like the council wants more information before they're ready to pull the trigger, and I understand that. And since we put the budget together, there's we need to look at funding sources as well to get to our needs in the future, not just needs today. So
I think what kind of scared me off right from the onset was the amount, the 5.2 million. When you again consider that you build a new firehouse for 3.8 or whatever it is. So I think the big question is, we need a firehouse there in that location. If that one's adequate, we can bring it up to code and up to where it's comfortable for our firefighters and keep that in function. That would be my primary goal, because we've already spent the money. The building's there. It's not in bad shape. It probably needs some upkeep and some things added to it to make it nicer, but not to the tune of the amount of money, even close to what is. I know that's just a placeholder, but I considered also that with that, I agree, we don't want it to outgrow it. So we probably need to have that conversation on what the fire service is going to look like out there, where the next firehouse needs to go. If it's in Stookie, then it would make sense to upgrade this one with part of that 5.2 and then build a new firehouse down there. But if that's not it, then where do we go next? Because we do have our Buena Vista firehouse that needs to come online at some point.
What I'm kind of hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing that maybe we're just not quite ready to include that 5.2 in this budget, but we would like to continue to have that discussion. And when we have some clarity and a little more, some of these concerns addressed, then we'd be open to moving forward in one way or another. But I guess my question is there a need to leave any of that funding in this budget for some of the upgrades, but my commitment would be that this would be an ongoing discussion and really a workshop discussion that would be ongoing over the next period of time.
My thoughts is we remove the 5.2 and we keep the discussion going. And if we feel like we need to, but I'm also open to what the manager Red thinks on if he needs some budget to work on some of the design.
Well, we have some design budget already in this year's budget that we've been working with. So I'm okay with that, especially the $5 million was funded by a bond. So if we're not going to do it, we'll just pull the bond out and we'll pull the expense out and we'll bring something back to you in the future.
I'm looking consensus here, Councilwoman. Feeling good about that, or as long as we keep discussing it? Okay. All right. I think we're going down your list right now, Councilman.
Thank you. Just a question. As I was looking at the numbers here, a lot of them are rounded off with a lot of zeros. My accountant told me a long time ago, it's not good to have all zeros, right? Look at the CPA down here laughing at me. He knows that if it's all zeros, it's an approximation. So, Mr. Red, if you just help me to understand, I know those are rounded off. Are those exact numbers, or are they placeholders that will in the future have an exact number, or what is that?
What are you speaking to specifically, Councilman?
All of the ones that are like 1 million even, 500,000 even, 230,000 even, with no odd cents. Are those actual bids or just kind of placeholders?
Well, we never budget any cents into any of them, just because it doesn't make sense to do less than often $100 increments. But if I wouldn't know exactly unless we talk about them specifically. So, for instance, when you look at, I guess I'm.
So let me use one specifically. The Signal Wash Parkway and Commerce, the $1 million.
Mhm.
That is a signal, like a traffic signal. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you've got some signals there that are 550,000, telegraph signals 230, and that one's $1 million. It's just would be good to know why.
So you're talking about our capital projects. A lot of
Right.
them, yes, they're
they're in the
best
capitals.
guesses at this point. And then we'll go ahead and do the actual design work. We'll have an engineer's estimate, we'll bid it out, and then we get an exact number, but we don't spend. So often those are a little bit over what we think they're going to cost to make sure that we have the room, but they'll be bid out, and then they'll be exact at that point when you approve the bids.
So in the budget, if it was $1 million, it came back at 870,000. Of course, the balance of that just goes back in the budget.
That's correct. Well, it just stays in our fund balance.
Okay, great. That answers it perfectly.
Okay.
Next thing, Mayor, the triangle piece out at the temple, by the Temple Triangle Landscaping. I was actually looking at the wrong piece on that. I was looking at the bigger one that backs up against the church wall. Our piece actually faced to the south, and I think it makes a great, Mayor makes a great point in that that's kind of an entrance to our city. I would like to see that landscaped and some ideas brought forward as kind of an entrance into our city, kind of a nice welcome into our city that kind of shows who we are, maybe shows our heritage, and not only that, but allows people to know that really is Washington right there. It's not St. George East, it's Washington. So I really like that.
Council,
How
thoughts
big
on
is
that?
that piece?
Blake, 0.13, does that ring a bell? No?
You pull that up on the screen.
The number of utilities underneath.
I don't have an exact, but we looked today to see what was actually usable of it, but I don't know the exact.
Yeah, I might be able to find, you sent an email today.
Paul,
The reason I ask is 300,000 is a lot of money
Sorry, we don't know
for
the size.
landscape. I just need to know the size just to get an idea.
That's what I was thinking also. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, sorry, I don't. It's small, but it's not. It's 10th of an acre, approximately. Yeah, when you've got the.
So it always amazes me how expensive landscaping ends up being. Like I was sticker shock too about the 300, but if we want something that's besides just grass,
which I don't think we want just grass, right? Like we want
won't-
to keep water safe. We want,
We won't put grass there. We would either put just, the minimum would be landscape rock.
yeah. But I don't want to do I don't want to do the minimum either. I don't want to just cover the weeds, right? And then we'll be out there weeding it every year. Like, I'm not saying do some grandiose theme, but it'd be really nice to have a little entrance to it, but it's definitely not like massive, I guess you'd
So,
say.
so if that's just like
It goes
a
through
tenth
the-
of an acre or something like that, 300,000 is way, way, way over what it should
Part of
be. So,
the idea, and I gotta be honest, I kind of pushed the manager on this one. I've been really pleased with the way George Washington Boulevard turned out, and really the way that the field is developing out. So certainly there's a landscape component too, but if you look on that 85-foot road, you're having traffic go east and west. The idea, and a little bit working with Will and Bill, would be to do more than just landscaping, but do a bit of a monument showcase sign that not only advertises Washington and who we are today, but also with some access off the sidewalk and into the kind of the pocket area, we could give a nod to some of that rich history of the fields. Because what I worry is that going forward, we have our history up here, but at some point my kids or grandkids are going to be saying, Dad, Grandpa, why do we call it the Washington Fields? So if we could have a little bit of, I guess, more than just landscaping is probably, I probably should have had conversations with each of you prior to the budget discussion, because it's a pretty easy target, but that's kind of what the idea is.
Well, to be honest, once I figured out the right piece, I was thinking it was one across the street to the north. But this also is a road that comes in from the west that runs in front of the temple, in front of the church. So it has also a really good access from the west. And I like the idea. I think what we do is maybe get an idea of what we want there. I think it's great to have a nice sign that welcomes people. If we had an old building maybe that, I don't know.
Well, and I'd love to see the council be heavily involved in that design, right? That would be something that, we can kind of give some of the marching orders and look, I'm fine to have, the 300,000 as a placeholder or a certain amount for design, but I'd like to have this body come back and be comfortable with it and feel like that it really is a nice sign and landscaped area that welcomes people to our city.
I appreciate that, Mayor. And then one of the things on this entire budget, I just want to make sure we're not putting stuff in I'm trying to focus on, because it is such a big number than we've had in the past. Every year it's growing, that it's like, hey, what are the needs and what are the wants? This is a want I look at, and I want it too. I want it to look nice and stuff like that. But I don't know, but I also don't want to put things in the budget if we're not going to do them this fiscal year. So this is one I could see we could get done this fiscal year. Some of the other ones I don't like to have them in, because I'm like, there's no way we're going to build them.
We roll them.
And we roll, like we had, what was it, 30 million last year or 20 something million we have to roll into this year's budgets from stuff that didn't get last year, which happens. And I think it's not right to not have the stuff in that we get built halfway or partial way. But if we're not going to even attempt some things, I'm just talking on the budget, like we know that it's not going to happen, then we shouldn't have it in this budget. So this thing, I can see, if we're in favor of it, I can see us getting it done this year, and that's something I'm in favor of. But other things that I feel like we're not going to get done this year, I don't want them in the budget.
Well, and I appreciate that. And to this particular item, it's a remnant piece from the property that we bought for the road. And then it's really not useful at this point for access. So, it's not something that we could really dispose of and find a higher or better use. I do agree that it could be done this year, but frankly, I would love all of your input and have this body collectively kind of say, how do we showcase, this Washington Fields area and let people know that that's where you are. We have a lot of people, coming to that Red Cliffs Temple from east and west, and we've got a beautiful city to show off.
So Mayor, my first thought on this piece was maybe put it out for an RFP. Because we don't know what we don't know, right? Maybe somebody comes and, hey, this will work for us. The problem is there's utilities under it that creates a problem. our Public Works Director sent me some information on it today that kind of took that off the table, that it would be something that you'd build on, you know? And so it really makes sense that it would be something to showcase our city and to be a nice welcoming sign. I think that if we can do that in a reasonable financial way, I would support it. I think it's nice right there by the new temple and the chapel right there, kind of an southern entrance into our city. So anyway, that was my first thought. Maybe build something there, but it really works well for what we're looking at it for.
I would like to get this landscape this year, and I would like to have it done very nicely. It's 0.53 acres, Drew.
At a minimum, because I
Okay.
couldn't follow contour. It's going to be bigger. I would put it about
Close,
0.65 at, that's my gut feeling on it was B, so almost 2/3.
So I would just say maybe on the budget for this, if we did 100,000 for landscaping and 50,000 for a monument at this point, and then if we put it out for bid and it ends up being coming in at 175 or something, we could make some adjustments. But I think 300 is, you know, I mean, we do landscaping all the time on projects that I do, and you know, usually on a half-acre lot, you know, I'll throw in $40,000, and that's top of the line landscaping, you know. So
Do you think because like you said, I don't want to come back to us. I'd rather set it at 200 and shoot to stay like as the max. Like you said, 150. I'm sitting here saying, maybe we should compromise. What if 200's our max, but we really want the design to be around 150? I don't know, just
I'd be, yeah, I understand.
just so
what you
we're
mean.
not
So-
like, does that seem?
But Mayor, I totally see your point. This is a main entrance to our city, you know, coming right past the new temple and so forth. And I think we need to do a good job on this and make it look really good. I'm just thinking 300 is probably more than what we need, so.
You know, I realize that every department works really hard. We're a busy city. Is this something that Public Works or a department might help with? I don't know if
Even
that's
a little bit
even
of community sweat.
even let the community come and help with it in kind of a community-based effort to spread gravel or whatever it is.
I like that idea. I just think we need to have a professional design it.
Yes.
So
I'm kind of leaning with Will and Bill.
yeah, I'm saying I think they've done great for us. Maybe it's them. It sounds like you've had a preliminary conversations with them.
Yeah, when I saw this remnant piece, I got a little bit of an idea, but I should have talked to you guys about it.
No,
So
that's fine. We just don't want it willy-nilly. I think they do great work. I think we recognize what they do. And I would feel comfortable with that. It's just, would be nice maybe too, to maybe offset some of the costs, maybe if staff can do that, or if we can have a work day there, I'd certainly volunteer some of my neighbors to be there.
If you
I'm sure you will.
give us a number that you're comfortable with, they can design to that number, right? We can make it really nice, but you give us a budget and we'll design it to stay in that. Landscaping, we'll have to remove the Bellagio fountains, but other than that, I think we can make everything work.
Councilman Martinson, what do you
What
think?
experience do they have with landscape design and landscape architect?
Well, Bill Linscomb is a landscape architect, and Will is an architect. When I did meet with them, Jordan was with me, and he had some ideas that he kicked around with them about what that signage could look like. You know, part of it would be maybe a little bit of an art piece which, you know, obviously, you know, maybe the landscape, and then we come back if there's a need for a little bit of an art piece that makes the signage. But I think some of the conversation included mimicking a little bit of the stonework and rock work that the Red Cliffs Temple has used, just to kind of give some continuity as it transitions to the fields. But I think 200,000 is a great starting point. I really just appreciate that support, council, and you know, I probably should have got with each of you one-on-one beforehand. But.
Oh, you don't have time for all that. Mayor, just one last question. I understand maybe the roundabout up at exit 13. Is there anything in there that we could repurpose? I'm not really that familiar with it. I don't know if there's a sign or something. If there's anything we can use. I don't know. Just a question.
A few Joshua trees, maybe.
But I think when they're here and they're planning a trip here, we can take them up there and look at it. There are probably some plantings and there's a little bit of signage that might be reincorporated. So certainly it's a good idea.
We got a number, council, you're comfortable with?
Yeah, Brett and I were just thinking, I'm not going to speak for him, but he just said 200 sound good, and I said 200 seems fine to me. I don't know what the rest of you. I just don't want to come back for another 10.
I'm seeing nods. Thank you. I feel good about that too.
And I have a tractor that Councilwoman Casperson can drive it if she wants to spread some gravel.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Councilman, do you have a few more items, or do we want to have?
The last thing I have, and I don't want to lead out on this, but the last thing that I had is I wondered regarding the pull yard out at the generation station. I feel like it's really important that we acquire the ground right now. It's the time to do that, $75,000. But I'm wondering if we're ready to do that, the grading to the cost of $125,000, because I think poles could still be stored there right now.
I think this is an addition.
Excuse me?
It's an addition. So it's expanding the pull yard, like working with Rick on the power board. It's an addition that we need to store more poles.
That the property is an additional piece of property,
Additional
right?
piece of property. So I think it's important we have that one, because I think it's important to get the land now. Land never gets cheaper. Let's just get the land and get that. I think it's small cost, and it helps the power department immensely for pole storage. So that's why I think we should.
And when I looked at it, it was more of probably a conversation piece to say, do we want it both now? I'm definitely buying the property now. Do we need the pull yard now? And I know kicking it down the road isn't always the right idea, but we also don't want to acquire something before we're ready for it. So, Mayor, I don't know if maybe Rick could speak to that just to see if.
Mr. Hanson, Power Director Extraordinaire.
Yeah, right now, all of our poles are up in the Parks Yard, and particularly even with the new building, our larger transmission poles, it's going to be very difficult to get them in and out. And I'm sure Parks would love to have more space. So it's not just serves our department, but both. And it's, like I said, if you drive up in there, you can see our current poles are on the entrance of the parks, and the larger ones are back behind the new building, and our only access will be cutting across their parking lot.
And do you have pole storage at your facility out here now?
There's not a single pole out there.
It's just, so you'd need to acquire the property for that new pull yard and then grade it to be able to use it as a pull yard.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
I know Jeremy's working on doing his magic there.
Well, I certainly don't have a problem with that, knowing that their poles aren't even being stored on site. We don't need our linemen to be driving through town, picking up poles at another location and taking their valuable time to do that. So, Mayor, I'm okay with that if the rest of the council is.
Anything else?
So I would like to, I think those were great items. The other item I wanted to bring up was the fire truck, and it's mostly because I want the council's opinion. I know it's 3 to 4 years out, but I know it's not going to be cheaper than now, no matter what we do. So the question I have is, do we bite the bullet and pay for it all now? But I'd ask Chief Evans, can we make payments on it? Can we do like in the next 3 years make payments and hold the price, or do you have to pay it all up front? I'm gonna make him answer that question for us. I would like some details on spreading out, because if we're not getting it for 3 years, it'd be nice to pay in like 3 increments, like split it up for the next 3 years.
Yeah, they'll actually do it any way you want. They'll let you pay it over the years. They'll let you pay for it when you deliver it. Just cost you more. So if you pay for it up front, so they're telling us it's 3.5 to 4 years from delivery. They'll basically they'll give us back the interest off that money. And if it goes longer, it saves you more. So that the ladder truck. Oh, the ladder truck took them 16 months to build. We paid for that up front. That was $70,000 in savings.
So that you paid up front, and then they gave you the interest back. So where it's
So
just
they'll do it
less
either
work
way
for our
for you.
treasurer.
Is it better interest than when we get on our portfolio?
We can get it either way as far as it goes. We can get you all that. They'll lay it all out and tell you if you pay it up front, if you want to pay it over years, if you want to make it go out 5 years, all those kind of things. They'll finance it any way you want.
Well, I mean, that really intrigues me that they give us the interest on the money, because that was my thing, is if we can earn the interest with our own portfolio, I mean, that's where I'm wondering where we land with money, because if it's, I mean, it makes sense to me if we get the truck and we get the interest back. I mean, that's a win-win for us.
That ladder truck apparatus, what did it cost?
We were 1.2 million.
1.2 million over 16 months and got 70,000 back in interest.
Yeah, that's what
that was math on that.
That was the price off the top.
It sounds like a pretty good interest rate that they gave.
The chief, does that lock the price in any of those scenarios though?
Sounds high.
It does.
Yeah.
So everything stays. So it stays on today's pricing. Because that's the other thing we know. 2025 changes all the motors. So motors of that size are completely remanufactured, they have different federal requirements. So it's going to cost more.
So
we just don't know how much more.
If we were to place
if we
the
buy
order.
it now, we get that price when you order it.
Okay, that's what's important. So we buy it now, lock it in, and we choose the payment plan that we want.
Yep. You really do. They'll finance it any way you want. We financed the first one over 5 years because we couldn't make the full payment, and then the last couple with what you guys have done financially, you paid for it in cash.
If you're telling us we made that much money, then that is way better than our portfolios, and we should do that.
In the years, I would expect it to
How
be
many
higher.
can we buy? Time delegate. Strike that from the recorded record.
Then
Just Councilman Coates, what else do you have?
That was it for me. I would love we just have a lot of capital projects this year that we're having to do. Like I said, we had 25 to $30 million rollover from last year that's in this budget. That budget was 120 something million, and so really it was 90. And so this year we're having to do a little bit more, and I'm sure we'll have I'm sure we're going to be 10 or so million that rolls over just because the project.
We'll have more than that. Just because of the nature and our budget ends at June, and that's in our middle of our construction season. So we always have a lot of rollover.
Yeah.
Just nature of the beast. Just really quick. I didn't hear pole yard, or did we reach some consensus? Okay. We're okay on that. Okay.
And I think we're good on the fire truck. Any other council members have some items to discuss?
I just had one question. So most of these capital projects are, a lot of them anyway, are paid for by impact fees, right? Do we have impact fees built up in the bank right now, or is some of this already in the bank and some is projected impact fees that are?
We have enough impact fees currently in our accounts to cover everything.
Cover everything?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. That's good.
I want to say Parks impact fee, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, is the one that will get pretty tight if we ended up spending it all and getting all the projects done. But it would run down our current supply. It's not contingent upon any new impact fees coming in.
Good. So, when I first looked at this budget, I had a little mini heart attack, and Rachel had to give me some CPR. But as I got into it, more into the details, I could see that, the vast majority of the increase is capital projects that we need to do and that we already have the money for. And so I feel pretty good about what we're doing here. So,
It's really the good and the bad of being a growing city.
yeah, exactly. So,
We have to keep up with the needs, and a lot of it, the vast majority, is to handle growth.
yeah. And if you look at the part of the budget, is just the general fund, there's just a little bit of an increase there, which would coincide with our, growth as a city. But, these capital projects, as I go through them, all of them are things that we really need. And so I think it's a good budget. So,
Mayor, the only thing that I would mention other than what I've already said is I wanted to kind of congratulate a couple of departments. Our golf course now, it's operating about 90% of cost coverage. We appreciate that, but it's wonderful recreation that allows all people from all walks of life to be able to enjoy golf, and we appreciate that. And then the community centers at 73% coverage, and those both are trending towards being able to be self-sustaining. And I appreciate that. And Mayor, Council, I would just encourage our department heads that they continue to look for all those ways to be, to trim those costs and to be able to cover the expenses, because that is, those are wonderful resources for our community, and even better when they can pay for themselves.
I just want to say I've spent a lot of time coming over this, and then I have brought a huge list to Jeremy many times and asked him a lot of questions and discussed a lot of this. But one thing I just wanted to have some clarity on is where the donations are going to and how it benefits our community, Washington City community. So if I could just have where those donations are going.
So we have a donation. It's under our general fund, sundry expenses. This year we have a planned total amount of $14,500. Of that, we have $1,500 that goes to the 5-county senior corps program. I think some of you have been here when Joni Lyman has come and talked to that program. At some point, we added that to the budget. I believe she still comes and asks for it, but we added it. It's $500.
Can you really quickly just kind of give just a briefing of what that?
It's for seniors. Does anybody remember more than I remember? They do all kinds of aging programs for seniors. I don't remember. Joni's a friend of mine. She's from Blanding. This will be embarrassing, but it's no, it's okay. I don't remember specifically what the programs are, but she comes each year and talks to us about them. $500 goes towards the Lions Club, and I believe that's for the Easter egg. Can you verify that? Do you remember what the donation is for? Is it for the Easter egg hunt?
Sure, I'm just a booster now, not an official member anymore.
You're no longer a
but
Lion?
That's what it's for.
Okay.
They
I
also
take
say
myself out.
they say they need a cover for the pavilion out there too. By the way,
We have $7,500 that goes towards our Utah Tech sponsorship, and I think most of you know what that is. We sponsor Utah Tech Athletics. It gives us a couple of days. We're having one this Friday for our baseball game, some employee appreciation nights, and the signage at the basketball stadium. And then I have another $5,000 that we just say expense for this must be approved by council. So we leave a placeholder in case somebody else comes along that the city council deems they want to do a small donation. And that could be one person or 20 people. It's just a little bit of a placeholder. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
well, here we are. Any further discussion on the budget before we give? I think Brian's got his marching orders. And Jeremy, feeling okay about things? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And I like the opportunity to hear from the public, and we hear from the public and council members offline outside of this meeting. And so I just want to recognize what Councilwoman Casperson said. There's been a lot answered. If people want to recognize how many hours go into the budget, even from the council and their efforts, it's not all just what happens here tonight. So appreciate that.
Well, council, I appreciate your work on this budget. City manager, finance director, department head, staff, appreciate all your work on the budget. As I announced earlier, I've got another commitment with the county commissioners. So I'm going to turn the remainder of the meeting to Mayor Pro Tem Ivey and wish you all a great evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Agenda item number 7 is a resolution. This is a consideration to approve a resolution amending electrical system usage charges. We'll have Power Director Rick Hansen speak to this.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, thank you. Steve, is Mark online? I hope.
Yes, he is.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just going to give just a quick introduction, then I'll turn it over to you, Mark.
Okay.
Back on, I think it was April 4th, we had the combined work session with the Power Board and City Council to discuss the adjustments in this resolution to the electrical rates. We had a few recommendations, feedback, and we took those, and Mark with his staff came up with a fourth scenario for the residential rate. We presented those recommendations to the the Power Board last week, and they unanimously approved or recommended to the council to approve the resolution that was in your packet. So at this time, I think I'll turn the time over to Mark with UFS to do his presentation. First part of the slides are basically the same as what you saw almost 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago. And then there's some other details that hopefully will help. And then we'll go to that point and then answer any questions you may have.
So Mark is from Utility Financial Solutions.
Correct. And it's probably almost his bedtime wherever he's living. So Mark, we'll turn the time over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as Rick had mentioned, we took the feedback that we had from the joint session, and we made some modifications, brought it back to the Power Board, and they recommended some brief, slight modifications to our slide deck, and then made recommendations as that's in your packet tonight. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. I'm going to briefly go over a little bit of what we talked about early part of April. Financially, the electric utility is stable. We don't need to increase rates or make any dramatic changes, but we did want to correct some of the components of the rates in each of the classes. I just want to briefly go over the financial projection. You know, this slide shows the assumptions that were used in building the financial model. And one of the major components that affects the financial projection is the capital improvement plan. And you can see that the capital improvement plan is anywhere from $2 to $4 million a year. That's being projected over the next 5 years. And with that, when we compared the capital improvement plan, your projected revenues, all of your financial targets look very strong. Your debt coverage ratio, which we establish a minimum coverage ratio of 1.4, you're well above that. You're anywhere from 3.8 at the low in 2028 to 6.5 in 2027. So you're a very low debt utility. From a cash reserve standpoint over here, this is the minimum level of cash to maintain anywhere from 7 to 8 million per year. That's a minimum. We want you to be above that. And without any rate changes, you can see that your cash reserves, I apologize. It's above that, anywhere from 10 to $14 million. We also did and reviewed the cost of service study results. And overall, when we looked at all your major rate classes like residential, that showed the need for a 6.2% increase. Usually when we look at rate structures, we try to get them within 10% of the class average or the utilities average rate change. And that's because cost of service changes every year. And you always try to work toward it. You never actually are exact to cost of service. It's virtually impossible. But we use it directionally in how we should change our rate. And most of your rate classes are relatively close to cost of service results. Some of the rate components would possibly change, like your current average customer charge. is $16.50. The cost of service study showed that it should be closer to $20 for residential. Now, of course, if we did this, then that would be offset by decreases in the energy rates. And so what you're going to see in the proposed rate structure is adjustments to the customer charges and subsequent decreases in the energy rates. Now, the rate design, I apologize. I was teaching this week and I ended up picking up a cold when I was out in Denver. The power cost adjustment that you currently have, it's projected right now to be at about 5.9 cents. And we wanted to true that up, but not completely. Because right now, the markets for energy are starting to come down and stabilize to some degree. So we wanted to roll about 2.9 cents of that power cost adjustment into the base rates. And basically what that would do is lower the projected power cost adjustment down to 3 cents. So that's been incorporated into this rate design. Now, all of our rates, you can see that we're proposing, are all revenue neutral for each of the classes. What that means is all the classes in total are not going to change in the revenues that are received. They're not going to go up or they're not going to go down. Now, the big component that we talked about in the April meeting was we had presented 3 different scenarios for the to change the residential rate. One was to take the customer charge from $16.50. We provided 3 options to $17.50, another one to $18.50, and another one to take the customer charge at $20. And of course, when we did that, with that additional revenue, we used that to lower the energy rates in all of these components. The feedback we received is we wanted to look at a 4th scenario. And the 4th scenario I have shown here, where we put the customer charge at the $20, but we installed or put in another block of energy from 0 to 400. Your current block goes from 0 to 800. And that rate, we lowered it to 10.2 cents a kilowatt hour, which is, and we did that. What happens when we do that is that $3.50 increase in the customer charge is pretty much offset by the reduction in the energy rates for low use customers. Now, we also did a comparison on what the impacts would be on customers at different usage levels with each of these different rate structures that we put in place. Now, this is in the summer. This is summer bill impacts. And at 0 to 500 to 499 kilowatt hours, with scenario 1, they would see about $1 per month increase. This is low users. Scenario 2, $1.29. Scenario 3, $2.16. Scenario 4 is only 53 cents. So even though the customer charge increased to $20, the reduction in kilowatt hour rate brought their increase down to 53 cents a month. That's just during the 4 summer months. And during the winter, which is 8 months, they virtually would not see a rate increase. Now, about 50% of your residential customers in the winter fall in this class, this group.
So let me stop you right there. Sir, let me just want to ask you a quick question, just so that everyone understands. So you wouldn't see a rate increase in the winter, but your usage would go up in the winter. Is that correct?
Well, if, excuse me, I apologize. This is a frequency distribution that I'm showing here. This is the month of January. And from most of, on your residential customers between 0 and 499, 51% of your residential ratepayers are below 500 kilowatt hours. Excuse me. Does that make sense? During the summer, their usage goes up. And only 14% are less than 500. Most of your residential customers fall in between 500 and 1500 or 2000 kilowatt hours. I apologize so much for my cough. Does that answer your
Okay, do you need to
question?
take a break? You okay?
I'm okay. I'm trying to drink some water, but it doesn't seem to be helping.
Take your time.
So I'm okay.
Mark, one
Yeah.
of the, if you go back to that slide you just had up with the distribution, one of the interesting things, and Brittany helped put this together, that you'll see during the summer, 9% of our customers use 22% of the energy in that rate class. So we have some very large users, we have some small ones. So, I kind of suspected that, but this kind of just showed it in the actual numbers.
Thank you.
Now, just to talk about some of the other groupings, or if you look at this, most of the increases, customers that use, this is in the winter, that use less than 2000 kilowatt hours are either going to see a decrease or very minimal increase in what their monthly charges are. This is in the winter. If you get over 2000, you can see that those bills will increase anywhere from $7 to $22. That's in the winter. In the summer, it's pretty close to the same thing. But over 2000, they'll see increases between $7 a month and $22 a month. And probably one of the biggest questions and concerns and discussions that we had in April focused on what to do with residential. And in discussions with the power board, they preferred scenario 4 over the original 3 scenarios that we developed. And so one of the things that they recommended is to go with scenario 4. So I was wondering if there's any questions or concerns from the council with scenario 4.
Council, any questions?
Just clarification. So I'm looking at this chart right here that you've got up on the board. I'm actually looking at the summer one. Just trying to simplify this as much as I possibly can so I understand it. So let's say I consistently use 1,722 kilowatt hours during those 4 months.
Yep.
Those summers are getting potentially a little bit longer and we have to use a little bit more air conditioning. But let's say I'm consistently June, July, August, September using 1722 exactly every single month. Scenario 4, I'm going to see my power bill reduced by $4.10 on the usage.
Correct.
But don't forget,
Yes.
your rate did go up by $4,
$3.50.
$3.50.
This is
rate.
including the base rate in there.
What?
This includes the base rate in these calculations.
All right.
So
Yeah.
that's a function of how the blocking works out, and that's why some are a little higher, some are a little lower.
Okay. I just wanted to just make sure, clarify, that's
So-
how I was reading it.
Yes.
So
And I think it's important to point out the reason that the power board liked this extra block is they really want to make sure that people that are, conserving energy, smaller homes, maybe on a more of a fixed income, are not impacted as much as we can possibly not impact them now. the 9% that are using 22% of our energy, they weren't as concerned about their ability to shoulder some of the increase. And maybe they'll look at conservation a little bit more heavy. So I think that was the incentive there.
Was there any other questions from the council? Okay, Mark, I think you can proceed if you're.
Okay. The other rates that we have, the small commercial and the large commercial, there wasn't there was we offered some options at the initial meeting in April. We were able to focus on one of the options, which for each of these, which is what I'm presenting here tonight. This first one is the small commercial, and with this rate, the customer charge of $22.50 would go to $25.50. The energy rate, now you have to remember, I took this power cost adjustment and I lowered it by about 2.9 cents and I rolled that into this component. So the energy rate is actually going down. And this is a revenue neutral rate change for the customers. You can see by the graph that at different levels of usage, depending on their usage pattern, most customers are not going to see much of a rate change. Some may see a little bit of an increase. Some may see a little bit of a decrease over here, depending on the usage pattern. So very minimal impact on any customers. And then with the large commercial, we took the customer charge from $92.50. We rounded it to $100. And we did the same thing. The energy rate is 9.6 cents. The demand charge is 11.65. And similar, depending on the usage patterns, some may see a slight increase. Some may see a slight decrease, but very minimal overall rate adjustment. The big change that the cost of service study identified was with a rate, you have a special rate for steel structures, and our intent in the long term is to put them on the large commercial rate, but that would result in kind of a heavier burden increase to them, and so we want to go and talk to them and get the input, feedback, and maybe phase them in to the large commercial rate over time. Is that pretty much what the discussion was, Rick?
Yes, that's a old legacy rate that was 30 years old, that had a whole different reasoning back then that just doesn't apply today. So we would just work with them and figure out an agreeable methodology to transition to where they should be. And overall, they're not a very large customer, so.
The last rate that I wanted to discuss is pretty much every cost of service study that we do now, or rate design for utilities. We're developing a new rate for commercial electric vehicle charging. Because of their usage pattern, how they use electricity, none of the existing rates that you have or most utilities have really fit their usage pattern. So we've had to develop new rates. And this rate, which would be just for commercial electric vehicle charging, would have a $35 facilities charge, energy rate of about 10.8 cents, demand charge of $5.45. And this would not then be used on any commercial installed electric vehicle charging stations. And that would be a new rate.
And I can just add at this point, we have the one by Walmart, the Electrify America, and then there's a small one by the Maverick at Exit 13 are the only two that this would apply to. However, we've been seeing a lot of interest in people coming in and putting these in, so we want to get ahead of the game on that.
So overall, is there any questions or concerns on what we've done with your rate design?
Council, any questions for Mark?
One other area I think with Merritt's pointing out is for the solar customers, the renewable energy, we're recommending changing the buyback rate from 4 cents to 6.5 to reflect closer the cost of service or the savings, however you want to look at that.
Rick, in closing, could you just give the council and the folks at home that are listening a little synopsis of why we're doing this and what it's going to do and what the future will look like because we've done it?
Well, I think as Mark pointed out, overall, what they're currently paying isn't going to change. There'll be slight differences up or down for some people depending on your usage pattern. The biggest thing was to that shift or the role of the part of the PCA currently into the base rate. And the PCA, you know, I'm truly hopeful that what Mark said is true, that the wholesale rates will start to turn and come down a bit for us, and the PCA will adjust accordingly. I think it was 2 years ago, it was actually negative. And so as that cost come down, it's an automatic mechanism put in to do that. The current PCA is high, partly because of the 2 or 3 months that we had where that were extremely high last fall. And that will remain with us based on the methodology, basically, and until a year from when we saw those impacts. So it averages and levelizes it. So it slows the up, but it also slows how quick it comes down as well.
Was Mark completed with his presentation?
Yes.
I think so.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate your information and we hope you get feeling better.
Oh, thank you so much. Do you want me to stay on in case there's any additional questions?
Just for a minute, maybe, Mark. The resolution that you had before you was scenario 4, and then the other 3 rates for the small commercial, large commercial, and the EV were as presented.
And in our last meeting, we kind of directed that 4th option.
Yeah.
That was kind of handcrafted for us. Thank you, Rick. Any other questions for Rick or for staff, council?
Mayor Pro Tem, are you ready for a motion?
I think we're ready for a motion.
I will make a motion that we approve the resolution amending the electric system usage charge for following scenario 4.
Motion
I'll second that.
by Councilman Martinson. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Martinson.
Aye.
Henderson. Votes.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Councilwoman Casperson.
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Rick, for your hard work. We know that sometimes this is a juggernaut to try to get on top of when you're calculating electrical needs and keeping costs down. And I know our citizens appreciate your hard work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and I apologize for all the coughing. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, we are now on the agenda item number 8. It is a consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Desert Flower Phase 2. It is located at approximately Desert Cactus Drive and Bella Vista Drive. I believe Eldon Gibb is going to present on this. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Pro Tem, and Council. This particular subdivision is proposing 8 lots on an area covering 1.57 acres. The amenities for this phase include a basketball court, shaded canopy area, and open landscaped area. The zoning designation at this location is Planned Unit Development Residential. The surrounding zoning is Planned Unit Development Residential to the north, east, south, and west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request and recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Desert Flower Phase 2 subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following 13 conditions provided by staff and the added 14th condition by the Planning Commission, which reads, this is condition number 14, that the developer shall provide erosion control at the berm and or sloped area in the vacant field behind the units located in Horizons West Road in the Horizon West subdivision, and that's prior to final plat submission. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Council, any questions for Eldon?
Has this property been through the hillside?
This piece has not. No, it's been identified that what they're building is out of the 25% sloped categories.
Okay, thank you.
I think just for the record, Mayor Pro Tem, although tonight isn't a public hearing, I think it's important to be on the record that the council has received all of the comments from the Planning Commission and the additional emails that have come through. So just for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ed. And we also, I know most all of us actually watched the Planning Commission meeting, and I actually do have some questions. I took some notes. I didn't know I was going to be Mayor Pro Tem when I took these notes, or I would have done a better job. There was a 14th condition added, and the reason that was added is because there's something to do, and it may be you, Drew, or Eldon, whoever can help jump in and help explain this a little better if I get off topic, but there was a debris basin that was created. That dirt was placed in an area where it's felt that, like by some of the property owners there in Horizon West, that has created back seepage into their property. I understand that there was some dirt there before, but not the amount that's there now. I know that there was some conversation about the berm from the top of the road going down. I guess what I would like from staff is maybe more of an explanation about that, and whether condition number 14 is going to address this problem and concern of the adjoining property owners. That would be my question.
I'll take a stab at it. Drew, feel free to jump in anytime, but we did go out and walk the site. Looking left, or starting on the west side, if you count 5 residential units in, all of that terrain seemed to be natural vegetation that has been there for many years. We didn't seem to feel that would have came from previous development or recent dirt movement. There has been a berm placed there from the excavation of that detention to help divert water runoff from coming into that residential area. And it could be fine-tuned a little bit better on the west end. But it is there, and an effort has been made.
Was the dirt that was removed from the detention basin, was it relocated adjacent to that wall? Could you tell? I mean, you said there not really an impact. I'm just trying to visualize, get a mental picture as to what it's doing.
I would say no intentional dirt was moved towards the wall. It was all moved towards the west. If any, there's a newer pile farther to the west.
And do we feel that, as staff, do you feel that condition number 14 addresses the concerns of the property owners in Horizon? I mean, I know that's a very broad question, but I think we need to address this as a council at least a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but there is some drainage. I think we counted 11 or 12 rain gutters that are coming over property lines, and I'm not here to get into that,
No.
but it, it can go both ways.
Thad, you look like you want to say something. No? Okay.
So, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. So I was at planning commission meeting and I was truly confused during the meeting on how the property was laying. I went out there and walked the whole thing. I have pictures here if we want to throw them up. I don't think, but I think there's two things going on. One, there's an agreement between the two property owners that's going to handle it. And I don't know, I've never seen the agreement, but my understanding is that, and we'll let the developer respond to it if I miss, but what I understand is that there's an agreement that he would clean up that slope and then allow them to drain on it, which he feels like he has done that, and then they would maintain it for the rest of the reasoning along that slope. When I walked it along the detention pond, it's pulled back off the wall. You could see where the old residue was of the wall versus where the detention pond is. As you go to the west, it truly is undisturbed property right there. Like there's enough vegetation that's multiple, I'd say a decade right there that hasn't moved. Now the pile to the west that no one really brought up, that I feel like that needs to be cleaned up at some level or something. But focus back to the project. This has nothing to do with the project. As the detention ponds, well, I shouldn't say has nothing, because it does, because the detention pond is a detention pond for this project. But between the two property owners, I don't think it's our right to get in between their agreement. And they agreed to it, and there's signatures on the agreement that says they're good to go with it. I just don't know why as a city we should be involved in making stipulations between the two property owners unless there's a safety, and I feel like he pulled the material back on that segment from what I saw. Now I don't have, because I could see the old residue on the wall, and the walls were having some troubles, and then they're dumping their drainage off the walls onto that property. So if there was an agreement between them, that's between them, not us.
We appreciate that.
So you're concerned about the condition number 14 that,
So if we make him do condition 14, then they need to move their green gutters to their road. And that was what was said in the planning commission as well, is, hey, if we can, it can go both ways, right? Like either you can work together and use this as a combined drainage, and the one did what he said he would do and you maintain it forever, or you both split your sheets and he needs to protect his side more and you take your drainage to the road. So it's just, I just don't think that's our deal, and I don't want to get in the middle of an HOA versus a developer of what they agreed upon along their slope. I don't think that's our thing.
And I think there's wisdom in that. I guess where I'm at is I'm trying to understand condition 14.
So I think condition 14 came from Commissioner Anderson, where he was saying he felt that there needed to be some rock protection in that ditch to help protect it more.
From erosion.
From erosion. I didn't see a ton of erosion, but I don't know how long it's been there. There was a little bit of cracking on the top of the debris or the detention pond, but I think it's because they used the clay and that clay cracks. But they would have to maintain their detention pond anyways at some level, just over maintenance time. I didn't see any major concerns to me about any issues there, but again, the drainage has always run along that wall, and it's not ideal in itself, how I look at it. It probably should have never been allowed when that subdivision came in. So
Councilman, the pile of dirt on that west side, where that's probably what was taken out for the detention basin.
I have no idea.
Has that, I mean, and again, I don't want to get in the weeds in this either, but I'm still just trying to understand, is that created some different drainage flows or impeded traditional flows that you could,
nothing I could tell because it was kind of up on a hill, but I was focused on the wall. Mm-hmm. I did notice it there and felt like it should have been addressed as far as cleaned up, just because we need to clean up. Can't just have piles of dirt everywhere. I mean, I didn't see any SWIP protection around it or anything that, and I think it's just something that just has got left. There's not that much dirt there to account for how much dirt was taken out for the detention pond. Okay.
So Mayor Pro Tem, I also took a look at this, walked it pretty carefully and took a close look at it, talked to some neighbors. I think this is a good solution. The erosion control, I imagine they're thinking riprap or something like that. I think that needs to be done. It's just kind of an unfortunate situation with the big hill in the back of these homes, but that, you know, it kind of, that's what it is. I noticed there was a good swell running back behind the fence, and so, you know, where the water can run. So I think it's probably a good idea to rip wrap that part, you know, on the east side, and then the neighbors would need to get their drainage, you know, going on their own property. But so I think this is a good solution. So,
Councilman, if you, Drew, if you can maybe pan to the west a little bit there. This area that sits between the slope and the homes on the two different units, there's been a traditional seep / spring in there. The city has collected and piped it. It actually runs down the storm drain to the Sullivan Park pond. And so there's been historic water flow and drainage along that bend along the toe of the hill anyway. And I think what's been built as the other developments have come reflects, you know, prior council's requests to kind of deal and accommodate with that. There's where the cursor's located. There's even a surface. You may have seen it, Councilman Coates, as you walked. There's a grate right there that's supposed to collect and pipe drain, you know, surface waters from that area. But there's actually a pipe in the ground through there that's collecting and distributing spring water, seep water that's always been in that area.
It's kind of a French drain.
I believe so. I would let the drain folks tell me exactly what it is, but yeah, it was
a collection area.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we'd go there and catch pollywogs and things like that. It was wet enough that it was a legit water course, and now it's been piped and manifests in a better situation down at Sullivan.
one of the other concerns that was brought up, I think, on the, you know, the written concerns was the some mud or some drainage problems in front of that. I don't know, is it number 16 there? See if you go up towards the new development. Is that number 16 on the end right there? I don't know, but I saw some drainage problems, but this new development is gonna pretty much solve that, I think. So, I mean, this is, you know, these new lots here are gonna help with the drainage, not hurt the drainage, I believe. So it looked like most of the, you know, dirt that was coming off the hill, you know, right where these homes are gonna be, and they're gonna solve that drainage issue. So one other concern was the basketball court, the proposed basketball court. Some of the neighbors were concerned about the noise. Is there an alternative to the basketball court that would be more quiet, that maybe we could talk about?
Mr. Jessup, would you like to come up and address that? Maybe we could talk about the hours that the basketball court would be available to be used.
If I may, before James starts, I just want to clarify for everybody listening and for the council, especially those that weren't here when the PUD was passed. If you were, every PUD requires an amenity area. This was the approved amenity area, approved years and years and years ago. So just so that's clarified, that this was, you know, because the folks wanted it moved down to the other end, but it doesn't help the people that live on here to have to travel all the way down by the other area and expand it because it's already taken. I just wanted to clarify, everybody knows this was where the approved amenity area was as part of the PUD. So I'll let then James go.
I'm just wondering if there's an alternative, another activity maybe that can be done besides basketball. I'm just curious.
This was
State your name, please.
Oh, James Jessup.
Thank you.
And that amenity area was approved before. I mean, it was approved during multiple iterations of the apartments, the townhomes. We tried to design this whole community all in at once, and it just doesn't work that well. This side hinders this side, and so it's worked better to go through pieces. We have, since this was approved, put in an amenity area that's far bigger than this over in the Desert Ridge community. I live in this community, and it's not a hard walk to go down there. My kids go down to it all the time. We also put a lot more into that amenity than what we even committed to in the beginning. We sport courted everything, put a really nice gazebo, LED lights through the whole amenity. It is a top-notch amenity. And now with this piece, you know, this was an idea in the beginning of putting an amenity, whether it was this or pickleball courts or benches or gazebos. All of this has been talked about. In talking with Horizons West, in talking with Desert Flower, if you go to the Google picture that was up there, you'll see that there's cars parked along this road right here. This has become some of the, you know, there's only 2, but usually there's 3 or 4 trailers parked along Desert Cactus Drive. Those will become driveways. We have expanded. Desert Cactus Drive does have additional parking slots across Bella Vista Drive all the way down. So there's parking there, but it would be nice in this community to have 3 or 4 parking spots right there that we can say, hey, pull your trailer off there and put it down there. That is quiet. Horizons West wants it. Desert Flower needs it. And it's a real, it's the benefit to the subdivision that makes sense now. To both parties, Horizons West and us. And just to kind of clarify on the drainage easement, I have met with their HOA, and we are currently figuring out their drainage and creating and we're committed to fixing that drainage to help that neighborhood, you know, to get all that water off of there, and they're committing to put those drainage. So that those conversations are in the works right now.
So are you comfortable with condition 14?
I don't like it, and I don't like it to hold up the plat, because to move, I think there's probably 13 or 14 rain gutters, and they're looking at different options. I am committed to take over that maintenance and even have one of the engineering firms engineer that and clean that up. And I'm okay to do that, but only after all that water's been pulled off.
So you're saying they will move their rain gutters off. I just don't think it's fair to put it on. It's not all his. I mean,
it really isn't.
It's
and they
not
get
all
that
his.
too.
I mean, I understand the concern, but it's not all him.
Right.
It's a combined effort between all the property owners.
There's so many things in this little spot that went wrong, even on the approval of Horizons West years ago. I mean, a block wall versus a concrete wall, where the old developer dug out the dirt and kind of just piled it there to where it was a straight bank past his property line, and then he put a 6-inch privacy block wall. We know Alkali just destroys those. It should have been an 8-inch concrete wall if he was going to put that up against. There's several things that coulda, shoulda, woulda happened, and here we are. But I feel like I've met with Lynn and Bob and several, and I'm missing one other, Brian, and I feel like we're getting it resolved.
So just about the basketball court. So are you saying it has, you know, the shade canopy area and some benches and things like that? So are you saying you'd keep that, but just maybe make the basketball court some parking stalls? Or Drew,
No,
help
there's
us out
not
here.
even-
What do we need to do?
There's not room for both.
Okay.
It's one or the other. It's a very tight spot, and we do need to have, sorry to talk over your spot here, Drew, but we do need to have access to that pond. So that basketball court is going to be shifted up to give an amenity. You know, it will be up to council to say, hey, we really want this amenity, and we want to die on this sword. Both communities don't want it.
Okay.
And that's just what it is.
Well, I'm concerned that they do want it. I mean, I understand. I've heard from Horizons West doesn't want it, but you sold houses saying I'm going to have an amenity here.
We didn't sell houses saying we were having an amenity.
It's
We
been
sold
on your-
houses.
It's been
Here
on
you
your
go.
plan though, and we approved it on your plan as having an
Desert Flower
amenity there.
Phase 1 never had an amenity. Desert Flower Phase 2 got pulled off because of, we needed to run by Hillside and we needed to do additional testing. All the laterals and all the sewer, water, power has ran to these lots already. But what it was, this was pulled off, and pulled off, quite frankly, years ago, before we designed Desert Cactus Drive and its amenity.
So your potential property buyers aren't anticipating this amenity in that location.
No, they're not. But they would appreciate parking.
Were you planning on doing lights or anything for the basketball court?
I hadn't planned on it. That would be up to you guys if you would want lights and even if you want a basketball court.
Well, I was just thinking to have the, you know, if you have kids, I think it would be nice to have something that they can go do without having to cross that street. And so I'd hate to just have another place for just a bunch of parking. Like I just, you know, if you have a family, it'd be nice to have something to do on this side of the street where you don't have to worry about, you know, them crossing that road. I don't know how busy that road gets, but then if you don't have lights on it, then, you know, it's not like kids would be out there all night playing basketball or.
Right. To get that basketball court, we will have it elevated up on the hill. It can be done, but it's going to be an eyesore. It doesn't go with the community. And if you would like, I could get the HOA from Desert Flower to reiterate that as well.
So here's my concern, James. You've heard me say before, promise me a trail, you promised me an amenity.
Well, I didn't promise you a trail.
No, you did. In your PCD, you said you'd do a trail and then you pulled it out.
No, we said there has been so many talk of even a trail going down the backside of the saddle. You know, just through the iterations of hillside, we realized, man, if we're even coming up onto that hillside, it's a pretty emotional piece to even touch. Hillside or putting lots in or trails. In the very beginning, there was a trail system around the apartments. There could have been a trail going down to 300. I can show you pictures of 300 with a 4-foot sidewalk with 2 foot of bushes growing over it. It's not equipped to handle a 10-foot trail with kids going down to it. So if we were going to run traffic down this way, city would need to do something with 300 East, because it doesn't have a trail system going down the side 300 that is equipped to tie into this.
I understand that you've seen that, but I'm just telling you what I saw. And that's been my frustration with this piece, is that I feel like we've worked with you and then you're pulling stuff out. And
I think that we've actually gone above and beyond. If you ask the neighbors and I would say the city, I think this is really where we've staked our reputation. We've worked really well with the neighbors.
I'm not saying you haven't worked well with the neighbors. I'm just saying, for me, I'm just talking me here, is
Right.
that I feel like I was promised some stuff as part of this master plan community, a smaller master plan community, and you've pieced it differently for whatever reasons you
Which
have.
we've had to.
And I've always supported you, James, and I think this is a good project, but I felt like I was getting amenities and I'm not getting them now. You're asking me to pull out the basketball court. You removed the trail years ago, and I'm still, I've told you, I wish it was there. So that's just my opinion, but.
So James, when I went over there, there's a big hole in the ground. Is that where number 41 is?
It is.
Roughly?
You know, one time we actually thought this was already preliminary platted, and we went to grading, and then it went clear through, and they said, hey, I don't think you have preliminary plat on this. So we went back through the record, and oh, sure enough, we don't. We need to come back through here.
So what you're saying then is to build that basketball court, do you have to terrace it up onto the hill a little bit?
You'll see the
then,
grade
or-
lines. We start at
Yeah.
2612, Drew, on that line. And then the basketball court is at 2818. So it's about a 10-foot rise from the road.
So it would have to have a retainer and the whole deal.
It
huh?
will.
So
Is there a better amenity for this area that might cost the same, that you'd be amenable to? I'm just hearing that if the residents really are not in favor of the basketball court, if you guys aren't really, then maybe we can find something else, because I do think that if they require, they posted on their PCD that they were going to have an amenity, we need to have one somewhere, or it accounted for somewhere.
I will just tell you, the original approval had 2 shuffle ball, whatever you call it. It's not a court, I guess, but maybe it is. And then they had 3 pavilions that had barbecue pits in them. That's what the approval was. So I've been working with Jen. I said, if you can't do those, we have to put something. And so this is just between the applicant and staff. This is what the proposal was that I accepted, but it's been an amenity all along.
Can you pull up the approved plan?
That'll be a good one. for
That's
you,
good.
Drew.
It's years ago, but
I know there's been
if
like
if I was
15
at my
plans,
computer
but-
in my office, I have it in.
What it is, it's 3 barbecue pits
I just,
and then a bench.
yeah, I remembered. I just want to, that's one of the things we should have is what
But
was
we
the
also all
approved
need to
plan?
bring in the entire package and how it's improved. You have 2 more pickleball courts in the apartments across the street. And then you have an amenity that's much bigger than the plan that you originally looked at.
And you got a lot more density for it too.
We did.
So it was,
But
it was a trade-off for that project,
It is.
right?
I
So
just don't see a reason to put, I mean, it's a storm drain basin. Is there, do you want a barbecue pit? I mean, we threw this here because I thought, okay, well, let's give them an amenity, but Kurt, I'm open for some suggestions.
Well, we want an amenity that's going to be used and usable. If you have a basketball court up on the side of the mountain, people are going to be chasing balls more than they're going to be playing, maybe. But I'm interested in what the council has to say regarding this.
I mean, James, you live there. What do you think would be the most beneficial amenity to your neighbors? Is it a basketball court? Is it a barbecue area, or?
We could do barbecue. If you're wanting my true, honest opinion, this would love a place to park trailers. I mean, that's what the community has asked for and wants, and I can get them to bring that to you. It's not
James,
a real pretty.
Let me just clarify. I apologize for interrupting you, but I want to make sure that we understand it before we get too far down the road. Trailers of people that live in this
Correct.
development that needs extra space to park work trailers or
That's correct.
play trailers, just a place to park them.
Yeah, we are definitely not inviting trailer parking from the public.
So you're going to push those up the 10-foot incline? I'm not
No,
trying to be
after
a
the
wise
asphalt.
guy, but
No, after where the asphalt is right now, where you see the parking, that's where the parking needs to go. We'd
but
add
what
more.
what if they needed to get in that detention basin though, and someone who owned the trailer was not there?
Then
That's
we would need to move it one way or
Yeah.
another. I don't know that it's
I'm
going to
just-
be an emergency to maintain a detention basin. But if we could even put a 3rd stall, unlike Drew, where you would actually be driving over the parking stall to maintain the existing storm base, that would be great.
Yeah, but I just can't. I mean, I don't think my code allows me to go from a recreational amenity, which is what was required, to parking for trailers and stuff. That
No,
wouldn't
it
meet
would
the
have to be an
criteria.
amenity. It would have to be a
Yeah.
recreational amenity, but what I would like to explore is whether there's something the council would feel good about that's a better fit, or that you would be amenable to, trying to work together with your neighbors here that, have voiced some concern that, I wouldn't want to fall asleep to a dribbling basketball myself. So that's something that we need to consider as well.
To your point, maybe something during the day with no lights. The only thing that comes to mind is maybe a couple of barbecue pits. Right there.
I'd be fine with barbecue pits. I mean,
It's a little bit of a gathering area for some kind of event.
on my trail that you told me you'd have.
Can you widen the trail down 300 East, 10 feet
No, but I
wide?
take the trail down to 8 feet wide and make it work because we have trails that are 8 feet wide.
Nobody wants that trail except for Craig Coates.
We name it Craig Coates Wannabe Trail. I wouldn't say that because I've heard people ask for it, just so you know. And the reason why is because it is so tight on 300 East and Telegraph.
It is.
It would be a pathway for people who do use the community trails. Just I'll show you what I'm thinking. And the reason why I'm thinking is, yeah, we have Sullivan Soccer Park. It does neck down for a little bit, but it would be nice to get a pathway to cut the corner and get up to Telegraph. off
You're
Buena
really
Vista.
only cutting, maybe 800 feet? But you have a quarter, maybe a half a mile from that point down to Sullivan that has a very small sidewalk.
No, it's 5 feet.
It's 4 feet
Well,
with 2
4
feet of trees over it.
There'd be a lot more scenic walk there, I would think.
All I'm saying is that it would be a pathway to go from Sullivan Soccer Park and get up to Telegraph and feel more safe than on our road that has no sidewalk, very little sidewalk as you go north. That's why I want it.
And it's the same all the way down to Sullivan.
Would we be good with an AB, compacted AB, like across this road that we use? Just give it a little bit better surface on it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's what it is now. I think people can walk it now if they needed to, but then they'd be trespassing, right?
Yeah, they can't.
And they're trespassing on his property. I think it would have to be
It'd be given as an easement.
a public
It's an
easement.
easement for the sewer line that is
It's
actually,
a
that's the
public
reason
utility
that
easement,
road
but
is even
not-
there.
Yeah, but that's not a public, it's just
Access
the
easement.
access. It would
Utility
be a
easement.
public utility. So Washington City can go up there, but realistically, the public shouldn't be walking on it because it's your private
Right.
property.
And nobody along that wants that.
Drew, could you clarify that, please? Was this part of that original development agreement that there would be a trail here?
Well, this is one that kind of, and I'm just going to give my interpretation. It's nothing against Councilman Coates. Right here, where my arrow is kind of shimmering around, they proposed 6 units, a fourplex and a duplex townhome. And that trail was put in so that it tied the two together. And then when this got denied, I think is when they probably felt, as I did too, I'm just gonna have to call that, because it really wasn't talked about specifically, because they asked for vacation rental and they asked for these townhomes. And so I felt when this got denied over here, that wasn't gonna be connected to them. That's just, I'm not, and it was never, I went back and looked, there was nothing talked about in the minutes or not, even about this not even being
I want to
approved.
be clear. I know the trail wasn't on the approved thing. It was originally proposed, and I always thought, and this was when I was on planning commission, I always said that trail was supposed to be there. It got denied by council for whatever reasons they denied it at that time, but I always felt like a trail should be there. And I've been supportive of this project, and I always felt that the trail should be back in there. And now, and I felt like it got pulled for whatever reason. And I understand if you don't get everything you need, we don't get everything we need. So I know that's not in, but I know the amenity's in. And I think if we remove the amenity, we should have something. And I think that's a good option, but that's just.
So Councilman, are you saying, just so we understand, are you saying that instead of a basketball court or a barbecue, you'd be inclined more for a trail?
Yeah, it's an amenity. It's just a
And that
different type
trail
of
would
amenity.
be 10 times the cost of the basketball court. We'll be happy to do that. It doesn't make any sense to put a trail where nobody wants it except for you.
There's more than just me, but I understand in this room, maybe it's just me.
We have a line here for you.
Well, to try to move this conversation along, we appreciate some history on this. These are important things that we're talking about. So I appreciate us taking the time to discuss those things. If there was contingent on a trail being built and it was memorialized in that agreement, then we would make sure that it was built. What I'm hearing is that there was some discussion whether or not it was ever memorialized in the agreement. I was in the same conversations as Councilman Coates. I remembered part of that conversation. I don't remember it being conditioned on those 6 building or 6 units being denied there. But back to the original discussion, I do understand a trail would cost more, and if that's not something you're required to do, then I'm not prepared to require you to do that. But I do fully expect that if there was an amenity that was anticipated to be in this development, that it be there. But I think the question is what it should be. You're saying that basketball is not the best option. What would you suggest, James?
It's a small neighborhood, so just a gathering area, some kind of barbecue pit.
What amenities are on the other side? You said you have a pickleball. Is
2
there one,
pickleball
2
courts, a
pickleball?
basketball court, a gazebo, a fire pit, and a kid playground with the wood chips. And it's a commercial style playground with swing sets.
James, is the cost for you roughly 6's basketball court versus gathering area? I
It
mean, are
probably
you good
would.
with
And
that,
that probably would be
cost-wise?
a better use. And it's maybe something we could go around it to maintain. So if it was, one of your barbecue stands there with, maybe a fake turf area, like what we have spotted throughout the neighborhood. Maybe that's a good use.
Be good with that.
Yeah,
Is there a basketball amenity in your development
there is.
over in the middle, kind of up on Bella Vista Drive? I was
Yeah,
thinking there was.
and we did sport court it, so it's a really nice basketball.
So if someone
adjustable
wants to play
standard.
basketball in that development, then there's a place.
So
Count-
Mayor Pro Tem, I think this is a good solution. I think it works for James. I think it works for the people in Horizons West. You know, and I'm not opposed to kids walking a couple blocks to, you know, they have access to the other basketball court. That's not going to hurt them, a little bit of exercise. So I think it's a good solution.
I mean, I could fall asleep to basketball, people playing basketball, kids, but I do understand their concerns, and I'm supportive of changing that too.
Well, we appreciate your willingness to work with the good folks in Horizon West. You know, those are great people there that bring a lot to our community, and we appreciate you working with them. And where this is preliminary plat, we're looking forward at a final plat that everything's wonderful and moving along well. But council, I guess I would turn to you. Thank you, James. You may sit down. Thank you. I think I would turn to you for a motion, maybe considering some of those things that we talked about as being a condition, unless you have someone else you'd like to talk to or have further discussion.
I have one other item I just want to touch base on.
bet.
It has to do with that, the grading on that southwest corner goes up kind of high. That's why I asked if it was in the hillside. It sounds like it's less, but I mean, if you look at the elevations, it's quite high on that one corner. I mean, it's going to be 20 feet above the house that we're going to see that scar. And what's the mitigation they plan to do on that hillside if they do that scar? So it's more of a question for James, what his plan is.
Right now, it was just planned on being a slope. Maybe we could do a small retaining wall and then slope it up to reduce that slope, if it'd look better.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that I looked at the bottom grade. What was that? What is that elevation, Drew?
This
So
one right
it's
here,
about
28,
12
30.
feet.
Well, you're at pad, I'm just gonna call it 18, and then the upper, because they're walk-ups, then the back is 28, so you go up 10 feet, and then you get clear up to the top scar, and you're at 54. So if you're 28 plus 10, you're 38 feet, and you got another 10 to 12 feet above that house that you're gonna see that scar. If it was hidden by the
From
house, I
grade.
wouldn't be as concerned.
And these will be 2-story houses.
Okay, but the 2-story starts, it's 1 story from the back.
Right.
And so you're still 10 feet of scar you're gonna see. And so I just get concerned that we're gonna scar up that hill and not
So
have.
probably the right way to do that would just be add a little retaining, and that would take away that need
I
to
would
run up the mountain.
think I'd be comfortable if we had a little retaining to keep the scar of the hill lower than the house roofs. And then,
Okay.
does that make sense? Just so that those scars aren't climbing up the hill?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does, and I appreciate you commenting on that, because we do have some hillside in this development, but that one is not one that we've identified.
Yeah,
I
we
appreciate that.
will do what we need to do as far as retaining. So keep it, you're saying, so the scar doesn't come above the roof line of the house?
The roof line of the house.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, it's a 3-to-1 if we add a little, and I'm not saying build a straight wall, but maybe there's a nice looking
Some
wall.
eyebrow walls and some
Just
decorative.
to help keep that, but that would be a condition that scar can't be higher than the roof line of the house.
Okay. Fair enough.
Thank you. So council, what I've heard is a couple of items that maybe need to be considered in your motion. One is, Councilman Henderson, you talked about riprap in that, and then what was just discussed regarding a small retaining wall, and then keeping that scar line below the roof line of the house so that the surrounding neighbors and area can't see the scar. Was there anything else that you can think of that?
The amenity.
And the barbecue amenity being changed from basketball to and you can specify if you have more questions, we can take some time to discuss that, but a gathering area with benches and a barbecue. I don't believe that they're thinking of grass there. It'd be actually a turf, an artificial turf. Okay.
I think we got to be pretty specific without a plan.
Oh,
So
I do too.
I
That's
would like James to agree to whatever he plans on doing so that we're just clear, because we could say a barbecue and then
You're wondering what brand of barbecue?
No, I'm not going to get into the brand of barbecue.
How many hamburgers?
But you throw up
Right,
a little,
right.
like the ones we do in the park and do
I
nothing
think
else
it
on a
will
sidewalk.
be close to the, probably like the stand we did just over at our other park where it's it matches the Washington City barbecue areas where you can put your briquettes in, and it's a steel structure. And then really just fake turf. If we could have the 2 parking stalls right there and then put the barbecue area, that way people that are going to use that, I don't know if they'll drive to it or not in this neighborhood. Maybe they park there and they're able to use that, or how would you like to see that, Craig?
Don't just ask me, but my thoughts is a smaller pavilion for some shade and a couple benches and big enough to have a picnic table at least. I'm not saying it has to be massive, but something that people can utilize, not just a sidewalk with a
I think that would be really nice. A nice pavilion's a good idea.
I'm not saying like not the big 40 by 40s, but
Just
a
a
smaller pavilion.
smaller one.
Well, 10 by 20, it needs to be somewhat, I think, but that's what I'm feeling comfortable with. 10 by 20.
Big enough to fit a picnic table.
What if it was just a square one?
Yeah, you
Maybe
could do
I
it-
think we
'cause-
did a 12 by 12 in one of our areas, and it worked pretty good to get a picnic table under. I don't think this is going to have 50-person gatherings, but it might have 2 families there.
And I'd say a 12 by 12 for 2 families is not big enough.
I mean, our standard minimum one's 40 by 40.
Those are in parks.
I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
2.
in parks.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I'm
mind
not
2
saying that.
12 by 12s if you want to do 2 12 by 12s.
I would rather just do it.
Just a single.
Just a single, because then
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, but 144 square feet, that's not much bigger than a small bedroom when it comes down to it, right?
my kids are spoiled.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing,
My kids are
maybe
gone.
consensus is like a 10 by 20. Is that what you're thinking?
So that's 200 square feet.
We just do something that'll hold 2 picnic tables, and then your terrain will dictate the
size. I think a square one would work better in this area, so we can come up with that. 2 picnic tables and a barbecue pit on the end of it where they can.
Yeah. Is that okay with you, Drew?
So if, James, if you were to get a plan and maybe submit that to Drew, that'd probably work the best. If you kind of sketch it out and show us what you're thinking and let Drew sign off on it before you start on that. That might be the best way to proceed. If that's okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm ready for a motion if council is done with discussion, and
I'll make a motion, Mayor Pro Tem, if you're ready.
yes, thank you, sir.
I move that we approve a preliminary plat for Desert Flower Phase 2 located at approximately Desert Cactus Drive and Bella Vista Drive with the conditions that were outlined by staff, including number 14. We also want to add that the scar on the hillside should not be visible above the rooftops, and that roof line, and that we substitute a barbecue area with 2 tables in place of the basketball court.
And then just in case everyone heard, I requested James to maybe do a sketch of that and give that to Drew, just to make sure that we're on the same page.
Perfect.
Okay, a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Martinson. This is a preliminary plat, so we're going to do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Casperson. I'm an aye. Councilman Coates.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
And Councilman Martinson.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now go and make us proud. Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay. The next item is item number 9, is a conditional use permit. It's a continuation of consideration to approve conditional use permit C-23-01 for a proposed car wash, and the location of this is at 834 West Buena Vista Boulevard. The applicant is Lone Star Builders and Eldon Gibb. Is this, would you come up and explain? We just want a brief update. I understand this is being tabled, but maybe give us an update as to when we can expect this and why we're tabled, and just keep us updated on it.
Thank you, Council. On April 26th, City Council tabled this item to today's meeting. We've met with the applicant. They're not quite ready to move forward. In my report, I asked to table it to the 24th so we can get with Public Works Department and kind of work through a couple concerns. I would ask that we just not put a date on it in case we're not ready to go on the 24th, that we can bring it forth when we're ready.
Don't we want to put it on a date though? Typically we've done that because we don't want things going on and on and on. But I mean, I remember the last one we did, we just said within 2 months. If it's not within 2 months, they need to start over.
I like that.
Well, we're kind of tied with the public hearing process. Unfortunately, when you don't have the public hearings, you can let them go with whatever. This one being that it was a public hearing, I think we do need to set a date because it was based on if you continue that, because if new stuff's brought up, you need to open up your public hearing and let comment on the new items. So I do think we need to do a date. Sorry.
I don't think it's a big deal to set a date, and if we need to push it again, push it again. We got to give them adequate time to do some of the changes we requested.
Yeah, we requested some things that could take a while. We asked them to look at maybe changing the flow of the car wash and entrance and exit. So Council, if you're okay with it, we could maybe table that to the 24th. Is that okay?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion. We table item C-2301 to the May 24th meeting.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
We'll just do it all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 10 is an ordinance, which is a consideration to approve an ordinance for general plan amendment G-23-03 to change from administrative professional AP, open space OS, and R-1-6 to a planned unit development PUD located at approximately 250 East Washington Parkway. The applicant is Greg Whitehead, and our Community Development Director, Drew Elliman, will be presenting on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to clarify the heading on that was a little wrong. They put the zoning, what the zoning is. It's not, the actual heading should be from civic and open space to plan unit development and open space. So I just want to clarify that on the record. So,
thank you.
Not your fault. It's just a misprint from the original agenda item in Planning Commission. So the applicant is seeking to amend the general plan land use map in this area specified on Washington Parkway. The requested area covers approximately 18.72 acres. The current land use designations are civic and open space. The applicant is seeking approval to have the land use designations changed to plan unit development and open space for those general plan designations. This would be for future professional office and commercial uses. The surrounding general plan use designations are medium high density and open space to the north, civic to the east, medium density residential to the south, and medium high density residential to the west. Staff has reviewed the requested change and it's comfortable with the proposal, finding it to be in harmony with surrounding uses and general plan designations. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their May 3rd, 2023 meeting with the Planning Commission by a vote of 4-1, recommending approval of G-23-03 to amend the general plan land use map from the current civic and open space to the proposed plan unit development and open space designations, as you see outlined in the exhibits attached here too. And that vote was on to you, the City Council. I'll be glad to answer any questions the council has on this particular item. You can see that the areas that are colored are the ones they're wanting to change, the pink and the blue and those white buffer areas. And then the green would remain in open space. All the rest of it would go to planned unit development. That green piece that runs through the blue is a wash drainage channel. So that's why they would leave that in the open space designation. So.
Thank you, Drew. Any questions for staff?
Is this a good time to make a comment?
Sure.
Okay. So I went and, I think it was Saturday or something, I went and walked all over here and took a pretty good look at it because I was really curious after planning commission. But to me, just from looking at the drainage and the, you know, the topography of the landscape and all of that, it makes really good sense to me to include the 5.62 acres, the pink area in the change to the general plan. It makes sense to me to do the 2.5 acres that are blue moving to the east. But as you cross the green there that they're proposing, the blue 2.79 acres, I would prefer to see that kept green open space. You know, as I looked at the lay of the land, walked around a little bit, looked at the drainage, it makes sense to me, you know, especially as I looked at the elevations of the backyards of those homes along there in relationship to the landscape, it made more sense to me to leave that in the open space. So that's my thoughts.
Councilman, the area you're talking about leaving is the area I've highlighted out here.
That's
You say-
correct. Yep. So it'd be just that area that you're Xing out to change that to green. So.
Or leave it green in this case.
Leave it green, yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
that's fine.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even though it's
The
blue. we
rest
wanna
of
leave
it makes perfect sense to, you know, to change to PUD. And then the pink on the far east side makes perfect sense because that looks like, you know, the lay of the landscape looks like perfect prime development property.
The church owns that, and they'll be
Church owns
building a
that, yeah.
chapel on that in the
Yeah,
future.
so, anyway, that's, you know, just walking over it, looking at it, kind of getting the lay of the land. That's kind of what my feelings were, so.
Thank you.
I'm same boat. I drive this. This is my way to work every morning. So I see this every morning on my way to work. And yeah, the topography there. I mean, the last flooding we had, the massive flooding that went down, it covered a lot of this area. I mean, granted, it was storms from the foothills, but there was a lot of water right there and a lot of water that channeled down that wash. And so I would even extend, because the church doesn't own the pink piece, correct?
I actually think they do. They don't own it. I think, but it might still. Is it a contract they have with Sitla maybe still?
To extend their property.
This is all owned by a different group. The church is just to the east of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think you were asking, right? The pink
No,
to
the
the
pink piece.
Pink is inside the property boundary.
or the west on the this is the west. So this is owned by
No, the pink
No.
inside the property line.
where my pencil is.
The church owns everything
Bob will come explain.
the other side.
Bob, would you like to come explain?
Appreciate your time. Bob Hermanson with Bush and Gudgel. Great questions. Just to clarify the one item, if I understand Craig correctly, that would be correct, is that that line does straddle into this property, which is still owned by Sitla. And then on the other side of the line is the church property.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that there's the church owns this sliver and this, so this piece is over here. Tacked on with this property.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, Councilman Henderson and Martinson. If we don't rezone that, recognizing that open space is often just a not yet designated placeholder, not necessarily intended to be open space forever, we're essentially telling that developer you cannot develop your property. And at the general plan stage, that's okay to do. I just want us to recognize that's what we're telling them, is that you don't get a chance to look at it, to mitigate it, to propose anything to the city that might fix the topography issue or the drainage issues. Leave it open space. We're just saying, it's private property, but you can't develop it. We're not going to consider that. I just want to be clear.
You know, we've been talking about kind of clarifying our open space label for a long time, and this is one of those places where we need to clarify it, because it talks a little bit about open space, you know, in the city documents, about also preserving some types of landscape and topography. Open space is what it talks about. And so that's what I'm talking about. If that's part of leaving something open space in the general plan, then I think that this is the perfect example of that. The topography to me kind of, you know, would lend itself to non-development. So one of the things we need to do is clarify that, you know, clarify what's open space, what's to be determined, you know, that kind of thing. Because, you know, I read through it and I was thoroughly confused. So I can see that anybody that's a landowner or somebody that's going to buy a piece of property, they look and it says open space, they go to the city website and it says 2 or 3 different things about open space, and it's thoroughly confusing. But one of them was to protect areas that have, you know, certain types of landscape features and things like that. So if looking at that definition that I read, then this would be a perfect example of that. So
Well, I received an email. I'm not sure if you all received it as well. And the citizen that wrote the email was identifying that very concern. Is that open space implies something different than being a placeholder? And we've kind of addressed that, but I do concur that we need to move that along so that we can kind of clear up that misunderstanding.
So we generally do not recommend the city labeling anything as not developable. And the reason why is the Constitution of Utah and the Utah statute allow for a landowner to bring a takings claim against the city when the city has made an action or a label that makes their land unusable. But to your point, there absolutely are land types and areas within our city that are too expensive to remediate or impossible to remediate and don't get developed. You know, floodways and floodplains are a very good example. Hillsides are another good example. Even our hillside ordinance, though, doesn't say you cannot build on the hillside. It just says if you wish to build on the hillside of this type, you have to remediate it in this way. And in some cases, it's not feasible to do so. And so I don't think we would recommend a general plan designation that says not developable, but we certainly would recommend a label that says, you know, the label that's desired, and then we would adopt ordinances that indicate what they have to do to make that to remediate development at that location.
So I think that does bring up, how do we expedite that? Because this has been a topic of conversation for several years now. So I think we need to expedite that. And I think it also brings us to a much larger discussion. The general plan was last done in 2017. We've seen exponential growth since 2017. I know it's not this topic right here, but
I agree with you 100%.
I would
I
like
think we
to
need to
see the
in
updated
the next
general plan.
3 months. I want it changed. I am so tired of this conversation. We've had it for years now.
Well, so it's frustrating for the residents to see what they believe to be open space, and then they come here, and I feel like we have this conversation so often that it's, you know, just a not determined zoning yet. And so I can completely understand their frustration, and especially where they're reading the definitions of what open space is. And so I really hope that we can get that done as soon as possible.
And that section is zoned open space, like not just general plan, but it's zoned open space. Along with, according to the map, along with 5,913 acres, that's all contiguous in that same area.
But let's also point out, open space doesn't mean you can't build anything in open space. I mean,
Correct.
again, there's all these things, and I'm just going to add on to what Councilman Cashman said there. This is not just going on in Washington City. I've got 30 years in the business. I've worked in 3 cities. Guess what? Every single one of them have the same discussion. It's just out there, you know. And now this, and I agree with you. And if we you know, it's already been decided that's what we want to do. But it's going to be a 2-step process. I can go really quick and turn 90% of the open space right now into not yet determined, just to get us by from having the people come in and saying it's this. But as your city planner, I'm saying we need to dig in a little deeper and start doing slope where we're going to do this and be more specific about all those. We can't just say this is what we're going to do, because all you're going to do is shift the problem from here over to here. It's just going to be the same problems. To take care of what you guys really want to do, we're going to have to go a little bit deeper and start doing some engineers, some slope analysis, those things to say what we feel. And we need to go tell, I think it needs to be said in our general plan. We may want to sound warm and fuzzy about open space, but I think the last sentence, this is not permanent. At a future date, things can change, people can ask for this, just to quit the, that conversation happening. I mean, general plans, you want to sound as warm, fuzzy, there's all the things we want and love to do, but I think sometimes people they take it completely directly out of a context, and then you feel like you're stuck with it, which you're not, because it is still a general plan. So I know Councilman Coates got something to.
The only thing I'm going to say more on this, and I think we should get back on topic, is we've asked for this to be done for years now. The past council asked for this. I just don't understand why we can't get it done. So I think we should make it a priority, understand what we're going to do as far as this, and it's all over open space, but let's make a plan and do it, because we keep saying, oh yeah, we should work on that. We never do it. And then we keep getting in these issues where our residents are misinformed, in my opinion, and they shouldn't be. Do I think they have a right to develop their property? Yeah, I do. But I also think it's misinformation if the residents think it's open space. But if we go and say you have to keep it open space, we better be ready to buy the property, or the residents better be ready to buy the property. I don't want to buy that property. But I also think they have right to develop, but I also think the residents have a right to look at their beautiful view behind them too. So it's kind of one of those tough things that you look at, but the property owner has its rights. So moving back to the discussion here, unless we need to discuss that more, I'll stop. I don't want to get these lines are weird to me. Like, I kind of mentioned it to Bob, is that I just don't know why we don't just call it a PUD. The whole thing. General plan at PUD, we'll figure out what the open space makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Because I don't know right now. I'm looking at a bunch of lines that I don't know. There's more to it of how these lines got established, and I can't see that right now. So I would like to see the whole thing just PUD, and with a percentage of, I don't know the best way to do that either, but it's just because we want to preserve the corridor. But I don't know how that corridor got drawn that way. There's no legal boundary that's a description that says this line. It's just a line someone drew. I'm sure there's more to it, and I'm sure Bob can get into that, but I don't know. It feels tight to me, but if we just identified that it's a PUD, and we need to look at it at the next phase, at the approval, and decide at that point what's open space, what's not open space, what's being preserved. I just don't like setting the lines, because what's a general plan? Bubbles, right? So they could draw, hey, we're going to have open space, blue, and not. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, just to clarify that, in essence, what they're doing, they were just using those, and probably not the best utilization. So what they're asking for to go PUD is everything I've hashed in here. And the green is to remain open space. If that helps simplify, you probably already knew it, but it's just put it out here on the screen. That's exactly what this is. Everything in this hashed area. Well, I need to bring this over here because they still own that too. So to include that, but that's what the request is right there. That area to go PUD, the green that's showing is to remain in open space. And just for the drainage, that it'll actually help having all this done with what W. Clyde's going to do across the street on the north side. And this would help clean up actually a lot of the drainage in that area.
So I think everybody up here understands the open space basically is a placeholder. And like when I go to sell properties to people, they always ask, oh, you think something's going to be developed there? And we always say never, you know, and just like you're saying, Drew. But I think to the general public, when they see the word open space, they think preserved space, you know, that it's going to be preserved and not developed. And I think that's why we need to take a look at our definitions and tightening them up a little bit, because even if you read the definitions out of the city paperwork, you get mixed messages. Because sometimes open space means a placeholder, but you read somewhere else and it means preserve space, you know? And so I think we need to, like Councilman Coates says, we need to put that on the quick burner and try to make some changes there that'll make it a little bit more.
Can I go back and open up that budget? Oh, sorry.
No.
Anyway, so I think we're gonna have this same issue over and over and over again until we try to define those a little bit better.
Well, I think Councilman makes a good point. I think the most fundamental problem here is when, like you said, when lay folks in the community see the words open space, that's a literal meaning. And so they think if it's open space, then there's got to be an amendment to make it anything else. So I think that's an important distinction. And then having a discussion that going forward, and I do agree, we've been since 2017 on our general plan. I think that, you know, that's a mighty big bite to take, but I think that we could start to have that process or discuss that with Mayor Staley, and maybe start gathering some data from the community of how to move forward and what priorities are. We can do some stuff in the meantime, but getting back to the topic at hand, that was a great conversation. I felt it needed to be had, so we let it run its course. But on this ordinance, unless you have more discussion or any more staff involvement, I'm looking for a motion.
I would just quickly like, if Thad, you wouldn't mind just talking about, there was some discussion in the planning commission meeting about SITLA and how they work with the city, and there were some comments that we got to that just was asking if, you know, if they have to follow what we have here, or they can just kind of do what we want and the city has to be, you know, approve what they want, or they'll just be able to do it anyways.
Yeah, because SITLA is an entity created by the Utah Constitution, there are some really narrow circumstances in which they kind of have their own constitutional right than the rest of landowners. SITLA has always come to Washington City and represented that they want to know our ordinances and know our requirements and comply with our processes. And so it hasn't been my experience that SITLA or SITLA's representatives come and tell us that they get to do things their own way. They've always come here. They've acknowledged the ordinances adopted by the council. They've applied through the processes established by staff and the city management, and they bring those to the city council like any other landowner.
So maybe just a clarification to both of your points. What we're saying is just because something is zoned open space doesn't mean it won't ever be built on. And Councilman Coates was saying, just because we general plan it PUD also doesn't mean that every bit of that will be built on. They're going to have to bring a plan. They're going to have to address the issues just like every other developer has to address them. But my concern is if we say we won't rezone this, that we could end up in some sort of situation where we're taking property from a potential developer. I just want us to be aware of that. But Councilman Coates' option of let's general plan. We're not zoning anything today. Let's general plan it and let them bring their plan. Might result in less of that taking issue.
I'm putting this purple line on just in the planning commission for those who were there. The planning commissioners made them aware, the applicant, that, and this, that's not exactly, but they kind of gave them the idea, hey, you better be very careful with this stuff down here and push all your stuff up here. And part of your PUD requires open space. And this helps relieve a lot of the burden upon these property owners directly. And so they had that message given to him. I think Bob wrote that in his notes, more than likely, that if this goes through, that he needs to cautiously look at this piece anyway and keep everything more up this area for what that's worth to help you. So
I think, can we let the applicant speak? It sounds like he wanted to speak on something.
Did you want to speak? Please.
Bob Hermanson again with Bush and Gudgel. Thanks for your time. We're happy to work through either scenario. The intent, as Craig has mentioned, is to get to the point where we can work through the site plan to justify whatever design comes about and leave what space is not buildable and what is, and do the armoring and protection for the wash. So the intent is just to get to the point where we can work through it, to then specifically designate what's buildable and what's not, and leave those things out. And so this rendition was just working with staff with the thought to leave this part out. It is definitely a better option for us to just bring the whole thing in, and it gives us all more flexibility to say where it goes. And so if that's the motion, we'd be happy to do that as well. We're just looking to graduate to the next level so that we can present something, so that we can get into details instead of just wiping it off that it's doesn't have any value to it at all. So that's all. If there's any other questions for me.
So the only concern that I have, I mean, I presented the idea, but also recognize that the way we deal with our PUDs is based on the acreage of the general plan density. So I think we need to identify what is that we're dealing with in this same motion. That we're not just saying, because it looks like the whole south area is going to be open space. I wouldn't say we'd include that area, because that area is it says 6.07. I'm saying it's probably a little less if you took the line just across the bottom straight. I don't know. It's just an idea to make it so I feel like we've got all these things going on, but really it's a PUD. We should let them be creative and create a good plan that works for everybody, leaving some buffers between the existing residents and the wash, and creating it something that works for them and us, and not be stuck to these lines. Or maybe we just go with what we have here shown today, saying, well, these acreages don't mean anything really. It's just a PUD with some open space and some PUD space, but not identify exact acreages at this time. What's your thoughts on that, Drew?
No, I appreciate it. And most of the densities are tied to residential PUDs. I don't know if we have density in commercial. I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'm not as concerned, but it does help to keep that in mind of how much they're going to put on here. I'm still glad you said it, because, and for Bob again to write in his little notepad,
For sure.
be protective of that. But I do appreciate that we I like what Bob said, let them bring something, and it sounds like you're more amiable. If you bring something and they're not willing, you'd go back to the drawing board instead of sit there and get all mad that you did this and that. Because at least the discussion's open at this point, and that's what I appreciate about them and the applicant themselves. I think they're going to be more open to, if they don't get it the first time, they'll bring you back something and keep working with you to get, I think, the best project for everybody involved, the city, the residents, and themselves. So
That's all I got, unless you guys got anything for me. But yeah, that's the exact direction we'd like to go.
Thank you. Council, I'll turn to you for further discussion or motion. A point of order. Come to the microphone, please. And state your name.
May it please the Honorable Mayor Pro Temp and the City Council, my name is Tim Piper, a property owner with adjoining property to 2.7 acres. I appreciate all your efforts here, but my question is, you've called a developer up from his opinion, and you've taken that into evidence. There's also homeowners that are affected in the hearing. If this isn't a public hearing, we have a developer coming forward, but nobody else.
Yeah, let me clarify that. And that's why I allowed you to come up, is if you wanted to make a point to clarify. But oftentimes, as a council, we need clarifying information. He's actually the engineer on the project from Bush and Gudgel. And so we need clarification. If you wanted to make a quick statement about this agenda item, we will allow that.
You will not?
We will. Yes, we will allow that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I guess I would point to Councilman Henderson, and I appreciate your point on this. You're in an area when you talk about open space. There's also, and I've heard the placeholder, and I've heard the taking of property. But from my experience, from the legal end of things and the taking of property, it has to be pretty severe. It has to be almost arbitrary in trying to, quote, take property that's not developable. And in this, if you're looking at the grades by the map, I don't know if you have that map, it's a 40-degree grade going down into the wash, and it's just not an area. Any area can be developable, but if you're going to flatten everything, or if you're going to raise it up 20 25 feet to do that. I mean, this is the perfect area that should be open space. Based on the definitions. I think there's also and I appreciate Councilman Casperson mentioning it, a reasonable, justified reliance by the homeowner. And I have legal training, but as a homeowner also, when you look at the open space, and I did my homework and I read the statutes, this fits every single one of them to the T. And you look at there's 4 principles that have to be met to make the amendment. I didn't bring those to make an amendment because I didn't anticipate speaking. I appreciate that. But all 4 of those are contrary to what is being done here when it comes to the open space. I appreciate the PUD aspect also, but that's kind of letting the cart out before the horse, and then we come back and my fear is, well, we're going to defer to the experts again when it comes to development, because you could try to develop anything, but that's a perfect example of open space, 2.7 acres. And some on the other side, but I'm not going to get into the details. I don't have any objection to the other parts of it. I think that can be consistent. It makes perfect sense because it's already zoned. But that has been open space since before 2010, and there's a valid legal legislated locally by your ordinances and also by the state of Ohio, it meets requirements, and by your general plan. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Council, anything additional? I'll turn to you for a motion then. Yes, for a second. No, I'm sorry. Council, is there any other clarifying questions that you would require? Give you a few more minutes to gather your thoughts, and when you have some motion you'd like to propose. Council, one last opportunity to make a motion. If a motion isn't made, it will die due to lack of a motion. For those of you in the audience, this is a process that the council takes very seriously. We want to make sure that we operate in legal terms, and so we consult with our attorney quite often before we make a decision.
So while Councilman Henderson and Councilman Coates, I was trying to find a way to verbalize this. I know that if it does end up getting approved as a general plan amendment to PUD, if we do make that happen, if that does get approved, what is the, I guess, the legal reason? And I know there's vesting involved, and I know all of that, and I know we're not quite there, but I'm trying to look at the whole process, right? Because I think one of the concerns that Mr. Piper brought up was the cart before the horse, trying to do this general plan amendment. It was brought up in jest that, you know, we've got to open up the box to see what's in the box before we see what's in the box. And so we've got to, for us to be able to see what is going to be proposed, trying to figure out the whole process and what our legal ramifications are and what we can do to potentially change this in the future. To be able to see at a general plan amendment, we don't have a lot of these, but at a general plan amendment, especially where it's going to go to a PUD, how can we see that? And are we legally okay to see something before the vesting rights are done at a zone change request? Am I making sense? So like, could we ask a developer at a general plan amendment to show us and give us an idea of what is going to be there if it does get approved? Or do we have to wait until it's actually vesting with the zone change?
I'm going to answer that probably yes and no. Because times the reason why we don't bring things for you in a general plan amendment, because that's not what the projects aren't made to come at general plan amendment time. That's just zoning city, ordinances 101. Because if we're doing that, then you're combining everything together. And that just can get you in a lot more trouble, I think, just from project to project. I'm not saying just this project. I'm just saying if that was the policy and the way we did things, you're just going to open yourself up to problems down the road in that way. So a lot of cities won't do that. In fact, most of them don't. They don't see the project. They say, okay, here we are. This is the thing they're proposing. We're going to go now. The beauty about the PUD is that they have to bring something that works, because it's negotiating zoning, so to speak. Straight zoning, it's a little bit more tight. If that were the case, that they wanted to come in and do medium density residential here, or they want to come in and do community commercial, because then you're designated, give them specific C2 or C3 zoning on that. Then that's even more problematic, right? Because then you're worried about seeing something, but you will see this project through the PUD process, if that helps you, where other zones, straight zoning, you would not.
It does. And is it because we do it because we've done it that forever? Or would there be legal realm? I'm looking future looking, trying to get that clarity, and maybe this isn't the time and the place, and tell me if it isn't, and I'll be quiet and we can move forward.
Yeah, it's not, but I can explain that, what other cities have done because of this, which we'll be glad, but it's not the venue to do that right now. There are options, but not in my books, our books, your books right now to do that. You'd have to change your ordinance and create this new development standard that other cities have done because of this.
As I've talked with citizens, that's been kind of a consistent theme. And as I mentioned before, I live a quarter mile away from this proposed project, so I know a lot of the individuals on that street right there, and they've all hit me up and asked me about this specific project. And it's always been a question of mine is, when it is a general plan amendment, why can we not ask to see what the project is? And I don't know, state law, city ordinance, whatever that is.
So generally speaking, until the landowner knows what the general plan designation is, they don't know what to design for you to see. And so that's why typically the general plan is what comes first. Our city code does not have many sections about the general plan. The general plan is required by state law. It's one of the elements that the legislature requires of cities. When they told us we could make and enforce zoning laws, we needed to adopt a general plan and we needed to impanel a planning commission. And so generally speaking, the statute says, quote, the general plan is an advisory guide for land use decisions. And so generally, it's the advisory guide for how we want landowners and their engineers to plan and bring us concepts for proposed land use. So usually that means the council's made a decision about that land's use before they've drawn any plans for you to look at.
And if they were wanting to bring something forward and then have all the details of it, they could pay all that money to get it engineered, and then they could bring that to the city council, and then that's not what we would want. And so it'd kind of be putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, because they're bringing a plan that's not even aligned with what they have zoning for to do. So
Correct.
that's why we do the zoning first, so they know what to move forward with, so then they can bring a plan forward.
Correct. Now, I will add the caveat. Many land use developers talk to our planning and zoning office and recognize that the general plan doesn't conform to what they would like to do. So they've already got a plan of what they would like to do. Those are the ones that start with the council with a general plan amendment, because they recognize that the current general plan does not contemplate what they would like to do. Sometimes those general plan amendments get approved, sometimes they get denied, sometimes they get approved in partial or modified in partial. But yeah, a lot of times the general plan is amended by those land users that want to make a certain use of the plan. And part of their process is to see if the council will make an amendment that will allow their concept to be approved. But typically, they really don't have much to even plan for without taking the risk that their plans may not conform to the general plan. The same state statute that defines general plans and requires that cities adopt them also states that cities must conform to them. So the city council will adopt a general plan, and the power company, when they build their infrastructure, has to conform to it. If they make a use of the land that doesn't conform to it, it would violate the same state law. And so both sides of the land use are required to conform to the general plan's designations, private users and public users.
Thank you, Council. Did you want to have something to say,
Can
Ms.?
I just ask one
Councilman?
question?
Yes, sir.
Do we know a timetable for presenting, if you were approved with your PUD tonight, what's your timetable for presenting a site plan?
Yeah, we would be working on a site plan immediately to get in front of staff and start working through that in very near future. I don't know the exact date, but I would say within 45 days.
Okay.
It's so soon. We're looking for this direction so that we have some guidelines to put that together, especially from the comments from last meeting and everything else, so that we can generate it to come back to you.
And so you've heard the planning commission talk about buffer zone between those residents, and that's, if we were to approve this today, I mean, that's what I would expect as well, so.
Yeah, those guidelines that we've been talking about in this meeting and the previous meeting would all be incorporated into these into this design from those comments. Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm ready to make a motion just to see where it lands.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve consideration to approve the general plan amendment for G-23-03 with the modifications that the parcels, how do I explain this? I want to leave everything south of the green line, of the main green line. Drew, can you draw a line for me?
Where do you want your line
Can
again?
you clear
Sorry.
this out and put it in the record of what I'm saying? I'm serious about putting it in the record. Take a snapshot, put it in the record of what we're talking about so that we're clear on this map. It's Control Alt Print, print screen, put it on Word document. It's not that hard.
Well, I'm gonna put roughly a measurement. We'll try to get to that. So just
I
tell
want
me
you
where.
to clear this drawing.
Go clear this drawing.
Clear what you got here. You can't clear all? Man, you got to get him a better program, Jeremy.
This is actually a pretty good program, actually. If I can grab right on the middle of those cross pieces.
Just dump
I'd be
it and
much
pull
better.
up something else.
We're about
So what I'm proposing is that we make the
the parcel of land a PUD parcel for general plan, except the south portion, which would be remain open space.
Right where the line is now,
Draw it straight across.
where the green,
Yep, draw it
Okay.
straight across. And in the condition is that there's a significant amount of buffering and open space that will be required along the drainage way. And the applicant understands that they will work and do their plan before they submit their plan to us, understanding the requirements we're looking at is we want to look at a significant amount of open space to benefit everyone, all the property owners.
That I'm going to ask you if that was a great attempt, Councilman Coates. It was an excellent effort. We're going to ask you if that was, is that?
Yeah, I believe that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got a motion by Councilman Coates. Were you done, sir?
Yeah.
I might just talk a little bit. You'll see the green waterway that runs through it. The city's position would be that that is not buildable. But this landowner, if they wanted to build there, would need to provide a drainage way of that same size, shape, and facility as they built upon, right? And so typically they end up keeping the natural way because that's more affordable and more just efficient than taking that one, filling it in, and then providing the exact same thing in a bigger or better setting. And so even though the motion does not mention that, this applicant, in whatever PUD planning they bring, will have to provide for flow through of natural drainage in the same or better status that it currently exists.
I'm going to amend my motion to include the natural drainage way remain natural with improvements along the edges. Okay. So I would like to hear from the applicant if that's amenable. I'm trying to make this process go forward. You've heard the concerns. I'm just trying to make it so that we're clear of that you already agreed to the open space to the south. We keep the natural drainage way. I don't know the best route but everything else is just PUD and they're bubbles, right? It's a bubble. Let's make a good plan.
Right, and basically and the intent would be to armor the wash to control the wash through that process. And then where the OS is, I mean, the intent would be to, I would assume, because it's on the downhill side, to have some kind of detention in their area. Would that be allowed in that open space as well?
That's thinking the shed hits heads. Yes, but I don't know. I didn't think my definition of open space is it's open space.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify.
It's natural, it's leaving it, but if there's an area that's already disturbed, I mean, what's the point of keeping it, right? But if it's the natural desert, but where is our detention ponds? Aren't they farther to the south?
Yeah.
So I hate to be a pain, but sometimes I get to be a pain.
It's your job to be a pain. Go ahead.
But I think Bob's saying he's okay with that, but I don't know that we can put conditions on a general plan designation.
You're saying we can't and we shouldn't?
Can't and shouldn't, yes, can't, I mean, true. I mean, the problem is this might go for another 20 years and we have to somehow track this condition that as it gets sold to some other developer at some point. And the general plan really isn't specific for that purpose, to start adding conditions to general plan amendments.
And my comment wasn't intended to solicit a condition. It was just to make it clear that there is a natural drainage way there. Even if you don't carve it out as open space, this project and its planning, the city can require that open space, that way in the next phase, or the creation of an equal or better one that replaces the one that they choose to build on. Now, in this area, the developers don't replace the existing ones because they're there for a reason, right? Because of altitude and elevation and slope. And so I was just saying that a motion that did not designate that as open space above the line would be okay. We would take care of that drainage way as we go.
And I appreciate you bringing it up. That wasn't my goal. My goal is that I think they have the right to make it a PUD, and PUD is our best tool between the developer and the city to have, it's like a working thing. We're not saying it's straight zoning. I mean, currently right now, a bunch of that open space is residential. If they wanted to, they could go build a few houses in there if they figured it out, how to get access. So, but we don't want to put houses in some of that because it doesn't make sense because there's faults and there's all sorts of issues through that parcel. So I'm trying to move forward, making a PUD. We both get we get to the next phase, which we get a look at the plan. Right now, we don't know. None of us know what the plan is. We should move forward. But I also like your comment of protecting that natural drainage way. So, but I don't.
So you're giving him instruction or some help, but I wouldn't make it a condition that of the general plan amendment.
I don't want to happen is say it doesn't work, right? All of a sudden they sell it and the next guy goes, well, I have a PUD and I'm going to storm drain this area. And all of a sudden they can find a way to pencil it to make storm drain down. I'm not saying that's what
the risk of zoning it or general planning at PUD, right? Is that he still has to bring it to some future council, but we can't hold them in a general plan amendment to a condition that we put on tonight.
So it'd maybe be better to leave that open space that's already there, that's instead of taking it out and doing the line.
Well, I like the red line. I think it's bright, it's straight. I like that concept. I think that it incorporates both the council and the applicant's comments about the southerly portions. When the PUD comes in, Councilman Coates has been saying bubbles, and I think that's accurate. That it's not going to be developed east to west. There's going to have to be plans that preserve those drainage spaces and armor them and protect them, because they're now going to build around it. They're going to add to drainage and flow. And so they're going to both have to preserve it and improve it to function in whatever development plan they propose to the council.
What they're showing now, though, I mean, they're showing bubbles now. If we say these are bubbles, then that's what they're showing, and we should go with the plan they have.
I agree with you.
Then I would rather just stay with the plan and say it's a bubble. We're saying it's PUD outside the green, and they're bubbles, right? Let's come up with a plan. I do think we're going to say we want a buffer along that edge. And I mean, I don't know what that buffer is, but we'll let them present their plan and move forward. So I'm gonna amend my motion to approve general plan amendment G-23-03 to change from administrative professional open space to and R16 to plan unit development as detailed out in the plan presented.
So
as the plan being bubbles.
Civic.
Can I-
Civic, right?
Yeah,
Not-
can I have you amend that? Because it's, the proper term should have been civic and open space. They put the zoning on there by accident. Staff did.
So not R110.
It's civic and open space is what it is, general planned.
Okay, I will amend to be civic and open space from the general plan.
Okay.
The motion.
Okay, any clarification on the motion, council?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Casperson. Do roll call vote, starting with Councilman Coates.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Casperson.
Aye.
Ivy is aye also. Tara, did you get that motion okay? Do you need any clarification?
I think we got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that moves us down to a discussion item number 11 on our agenda. This is a discussion pertaining to amending the modifying regulations within the residential zoning districts for detached accessory building structures. Community Development Director Drew Ellerman has this item.
So we don't have anything to pull up. Hopefully you have your packets on your iPads. Just to catch up, we're in the process of amending the modifying regulations, for accessory structures and buildings. So took this to the Planning Commission. They sat and just hemmed and hawed for a good half an hour, couldn't come up with any specific numbers. So they said, well, we'll feel great with what the council decides to do. So I'm just bringing it back. And so in our last discussion with you folks was the high number was 2,400, the low number was 1,500. Doesn't mean you're stuck to that. I'm just refreshing your minds. That's kind of, and then there was quite a few numbers in between. Because the plan is to get rid of the percentage. And I think you decided as a group you wanted to put a number on it because of that worst case scenario
A
type
maximum
thing.
number, yeah.
Yep, and that, so I'm just here to get that number. I'm already on the docket for next planning commission next week with an ordinance, and then you will see it the week after. So 2 weeks we'll have that in here to be voted on and done. I just wanted to get a number so that we just look like it's ready to go for planning commission, city council, and just take it right through the finish line.
So one of the state law requirements that comes when the state gave us the right to adopt our own zoning, they make us, anytime we adopt a new land use regulation or change one, they make us have our planning commission notice and hold a public hearing. You've seen those, the public come and talk and share. The council doesn't have to do the second public hearing. They may if they want to, but then the council would take the recommendations of the planning commission and the public and then consider that. And so we need Drew to have something precise that you would like him to have be noticed at the planning commission.
Square feet? Okay, maximum of, do I hear 10?
What the precision, by the way, the precision isn't what has to be adopted. So let's say you write something precise tonight, the public and the planning commission bring some good ideas. You can still adopt those good ideas. We just want them to have something to recommend or deny.
And I think you're correct, Drew, in that what we were seeking to do is remove the 50%. I know the council has had some discussion about what the maximum number is, and I think, would you feel good about just everyone kind of putting your...
If you're okay, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll
Please,
start.
please.
I've had discussions with everybody here, I think everybody here, at least in passing, and I'm okay with actually just having them abide by setback regulations, not setting a maximum, not setting a minimum. That's where I'm at. Just follow current city setbacks based on their zoning.
Well,
and their
so you would
property.
be, your limit would be the 25% of the rear yard. They could just go up. So if I have a 10,000 square foot backyard, I get a 2,500 square foot building. I'm just, because that's in essence what you're saying. I just want to clarify that.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying abide by the setbacks. So is there a setback on a backyard?
Well, yeah.
Setback on a side yard?
There is, but your modifying regulations allow you to not stay in them if you do certain things. That's what the modifying does. So if you just keep with the setbacks and they got to stay within the building envelope, and I don't think you want to do that. I'm just trying to help you.
So I think I think you guys are talking past each other a little bit. You're saying setbacks, and that means something different to Drew than I think it means to the rest of us. But there's also a rule that says you can only put structures in 25% of your backyard. And we do want, you're saying if their backyard is extremely large, you want them to have an extremely large accessory building, but it has to meet all the setbacks, meaning distances from the property line, but it also has to meet can't be over 25% of the total square footage of their backyard.
No, I am strictly setbacks, not 25%.
You're saying they could do 100,
if they
say
want
90% of their backyard.
90% of their backyard, as long as they stay there 10 foot away from their property, whatever that backyard setback is, side yard setback is, that's where I'm at with this one.
Okay, thank you,
so
Councilman.
everybody knows.
So 10 feet away from the main building and 10 feet away from the nearest corner.
Or whatever the CCR's HOA, whatever that dictates.
Thank you.
Or the PUD.
Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question of, if we left it at the 50%, is there a way for special, because I feel like we're changing this to help one or two, like a small minority in our city. Is there a way just to say, well, if you feel like you need more than the 50%, come get approval, like a condition.
Like the height waiver.
Yeah, like the height waiver. I'm just asking, if I just thought of it when you said setbacks. I'm like, well, if it's that egregious, like I don't want to do that. That seems like a lot, because there could be you could have a whole huge, I mean, Brett's gonna have a huge shop in his backyard here soon. And I think Rachel's gonna be mad at us, and we're just gonna have to.
I'm Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to take the screen here and just show the council there is a city code that would need to be changed in addition to incorporate what Councilmember Martinson is sharing.
So Thad, would it be advisable for us to go through the council and get their kind of where they're at and see if there's anything else we need to discuss, because what I asked was just for each councilman to kind of say where they're at. And then maybe some of those questions could be answered again through that. Would that be okay?
Sure, whatever you want. It's your meeting. I was just going to reference you to letter F here. And your city code says accessory buildings and structures, including shade structures as outlined below. And I'll just add as parenthetical, including pools as interpreted by our planning, zoning, and building, located in the rear yard shall not cover more than 25% of the rear yard area. And so that was the scenario that Drew had drawn. So right now, our backyards are limited by setbacks and by the 25% rule. And then we have a backyard accessory dwelling restriction that says, notwithstanding this 25% and the setbacks, your accessory buildings can only be certain size. And so Councilman Martinson's concept would both change the accessory buildings size ordinance and change this one. And so that's all I was trying to point out.
Thank you. Councilman Henderson,
So I think I calculated if we just did it with the setbacks in my yard, including the 25% thing, it was a few months ago, but I think it was, 2,800, 3,000 square foot shop. So, but I have a pretty big backyard. So I think where I would probably be is to have up to 2,400 square feet. And then if somebody had a really large lot, like 3/4 of an acre, and they wanted something bigger, they could come in and talk to planning commission or whoever. So I'd like a pathway for shops that are bigger than 2,400 square feet, but I would be comfortable with up to 2,400 square feet, without having to go through a process. So,
Councilman Coates?
I don't have a bearing on the square footage. I like percentages better, but I see why we want to change it if there are residents. I would rather leave it at the 50 because we have the other rules, and have a pathway to have them come in for I would call it a variance.
Permitted exception.
Yeah, so you're saying leave the 25%, and don't put a limit on the building. Is that,
No,
and then if they want above
that's not
that?
what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
You have a code that right now it says 50% of the square foot of the main building.
Right.
I'm saying leave that. We have our code that no 25%.
Okay.
And if then you come in and say, hey, I have an acre. My house is 1,500 square feet because it's me and my wife, and I want to build a big shop, and I have the room. Then I don't see why people would. But that's just, I just feel like there's only a handful of those people that have that ability in our town, and I want them to have that ability. But it's hard for me to put a number, but I'm not saying 24 is not bad, but that's just where I'm at.
So just to summarize, you're saying leave the code as written, add a codified exception opportunity that the council would decide whether that exception should apply to that situation.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councilman. And where I'm at is I'm at 2,400 square feet with the idea that if someone could come in and get what'd you call it, Judge, a variance or a
Permitted
exception? Permitted exception.
Yeah, variance is a statutory term that refers to zoning, and we try not to give those.
So where I'm at is the 2,400 with a permitted exception. Councilwoman Caspersons?
So currently, how it's written right now is someone could build as long as they follow the setbacks and don't go exceed the 25%, they could build as many structures in their property as they want, as long as they fit that already.
Yeah, so if they had a 2,000 square foot home, they had a big backyard, they could build several 1,000 square foot shops till they hit the 25%. So you could build multiple of them. It's just, and then you're held by the overall 25%. But so you could do it in 2 or 3 buildings. If you needed 3,000 square feet and just didn't mind having it in 3 different buildings, you could do that currently without any issues. Oh, I hope that answers your question.
Currently, you get part of it's allocated to a pool, part of it's allocated to a lounge or gazebo type structure, and then they have the you know, the garage or the shed or whatever they call it. So currently they allocate that percentage amongst several different uses.
Okay. I personally don't like the idea of having to have homeowners come and ask us for permission, and we're like, we get to determine if we like that or not. And I really do not like that idea. I'd rather have clear standards that our residents can understand and follow, and not have to, you know, come in and apply for an exception. I just do not prefer that myself.
Thank you. Anything else, council, that you'd like to add to that?
I'd like to ask a clarifying question. Are you saying no square footage in your where Councilmember Martinson is just?
No,
it's just open?
I'm okay with the setbacks and leaving the 25%. But then, from my understanding, you were wanting to leave the ordinance as it is now, and then anyone that wanted to go above that 50%, they have to come in and request.
That's what I
from-
that's what I stated. Yes. So, but are you okay with the Councilman Henderson wanted to swap, basically cut the 50% from the main building and just do a square footage? Because I feel like I don't know, right? Like, we're just making guesses here on a square footage, and I that's where I'm uncomfortable putting a square footage, because I don't know.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with that too, because I think one of the meetings you mentioned that you were building a home and they built their garage with, it was like 7,000 square feet. And so, you know, if their yard was big enough and they wanted to have a garage, or, you know, some type of building in addition to their 7,000 square foot garage. I mean, I don't know if it would
They were
mix.
on 5 acres, so.
Yeah, and so maybe they'd want a bigger space for that.
No, a guy who has 2 acres and he built 15,000 square foot garage. So, but it just depends on how it looks, because it morphed into his house. Like, it really looked like his house and you couldn't even tell, right? So
I think the discussion was that we were going to come back and try to find a maximum, but what I'm hearing is there's also a conversation whether there should be a maximum. Maybe then it's dictated by the setbacks and by the 25% of the backyard area. Is that what I'm hearing, council?
I'd be okay with that, I think.
I think I'd be okay with that as well.
But I don't know.
You're going to have that one or two outliers that's going to happen. No matter what you decide on tonight, and in 2 weeks, you know, every time you think you got it just covered, somebody walks through the door within a year and it's like, oh, we didn't think about that. So you can't protect against everything. So I see, you know, so the two kind of, it's come down to almost two of them, because you have a 3 and a 1 and a 1. So I guess there's 3 items out, no limit. And I don't mean, it's kind of what it is, right? You want to keep it is, but have them come in with special exceptions to it. And it sounds like the others are kind of going with no limit, hold to the 25% tight, and that's it.
2,400.
No, I thought that you don't want a 2,400. And are you good? You want, so
I feel
you
like
do
you're
want
taking my order for
2,400.
Burger King.
No, wait, what was that again?
Yes. So let's clarify.
I'm not sure what everybody.
Councilman Martinson.
That's right.
Isn't there a song named that? Anyway, I think where we're at, honestly, I think Councilman Martinson is no limit. Let them build what they can. Brett, you mentioned the 24, but like me, I think that I'm amenable to allow the setbacks to dictate. If that's where the council's at, I'm fine with that.
I mean, I'm not stuck on the 2,500. I would be fine with what Councilwoman Casperson's saying, that we just, you know,
Hold
keep the
25%,
setbacks and the 25%.
meet the setbacks,
I mean,
all
that
the
makes it
others.
easy.
So I think that's where we're at. Let's go ahead and take that forward, if you will.
And you could start there, and then, you know, there'd be a public hearing, and then, you know, this.
Right, next week, I'm going to take it what I'm going to propose next week will be something to this. You know, where, you know, if you guys have your little sheets that I sent you, that item E is going to say, in no case, well, I may not even say in no case, I'm just going to say that the size of the detached accessory building or structure will be dictated by the 25% limitation of the backyard area. Because all the other things will be met, okay? Because it's going to be outlined in there. You get the 3 foot off of the rear and the side if you're 10 feet away. So you're going to, the dictate will be the 25%. But that's counting all your buildings. So, you know, if I have a gazebo and I have
A pool.
well, we don't count pools. Surprise, surprise, we never really have because they're in ground, not above ground. So I know they're a structure, but I don't want to get into that can of worms right now because it helps everybody in the city. I know. That's how it's been. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But so we dictate it. If it's a pool house and all these other things, that's what dictates the 25%.
Okay,
So-
I think we've beat this thing to death, so let's go ahead and move on on our agenda.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry.
Please,
if that's
please,
okay.
no, Councilwoman.
So,
I know what you-
Dad, so this will kind of align with other ordinances that we have, you know, with the accessory building, and so it kind of, we don't have to go through and change other ordinances. It will kind of align nicely
Yeah,
with what we have.
What Drew has described is what the planning commission will receive is an ordinance amendment that takes letter E that used to say shall not exceed 50% of the square footage of the residence. It'll remove all of that and will say shall not be a size that exceeds the city code that references 25% and the city code that references setbacks. So it'll just say shall not exceed these other rules. And then, of course, that size, they can max that out if they don't have any other structures that use it. But if they do other structure uses, their garage will be a function of whatever space they've got left.
And that will apply to both ordinances, the ADU and I've got the numbers, but.
So ADU is a little bit different. This is an ordinance about just accessory structures, not necessarily accessory dwellings. But yeah, ADUs have some size and relativity ordinances as well.
So my original request was to remove the 50% from both the ADU, the 9-8A-8, and then the 9-8A6. So just to clarify, it's both of those.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you in that amendment will include the ADU part, taking the 50% off. It'll just be a maximum of 650 on that detached ADU, and then we'll get this other stuff in. So, but I do have one other thing I need to ask you good folks. As I went through the ordinances, all the modifying regulations, they're in your residential agricultural, which I agree it should be in there. Your single family residential, agree should be in there. But it also is stated the same way in your R2 and your R3 zones. And I don't know if I would go to this in my R2, I can see where you might want to leave it. I don't have any issues there, but in your R3 multifamily, I don't know if we ought to do that change in there, but that's up to you. I'm just, because it's stated in there, I want to bring that up now so that if you want to do it in there, I can do it in there, or leave it like it is in the R3 multifamily. You're not going to have that many of them that are like that, but I'm just thinking of these multifamily projects, detached accessory structures. I don't know if we ought to have bigger ones with multifamily stuff. That's just my professional opinion.
I think
to you
what my intent was for single family dwellings. You have to split the hairs on where that lands, but for me, it was single family residential was.
So that's why I'll put it in the RA, which is residential agricultural, and the single family. Because even I was sitting on this fence where sometimes it'd be okay, and other times I'm going, oh no, that could be a disaster.
That was never my intention to add it to those zones. So if it's okay with the council, I think that with that clarification, I think we're good.
So, okay, so single family RAs, that'll be it. Okay, perfect. We'll move forward.
Yeah, one quick question. Attached accessory buildings, what's the ordinance there?
There's no such thing as an attached accessory.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I know if it's larger,
if it's made
people will be able
part,
to build a breezeway, they'll do something to shirk the system.
Yeah,
so.
if you connect it to the house, they still have to meet all the setbacks, the regular setbacks. They don't get the relief to go to the 3 foot. But if you have to be in the building envelope, but it becomes part of the primary, size does not come into effect then.
They're internal or external. So thank you very much. Good discussion. Let's move on to number 12, report of officers from assigned committee. Councilman Martinson, what have you got for us?
Really quick, Mayor Pro Tem had a good area chamber board meeting with Washington Area Chamber. They've got several events coming up, just a lot of ribbon cutting. So just watch social media for all of those because they're trying to get better at sending the email out to each of the city council members for each of those ribbon cuttings. They've got 9 coming up right now, but the next big event is the June 2nd movie night. We've got another meeting before then, but I'll probably have thrown this paper away before then. So.
And I was quite intrigued with the lunch they're having out at Settlers, having the new economic development director from Washington County there. So
on the 16th.
Yeah, we're proud of them, Councilman. Make sure you share that with them. We appreciate what they're doing there for sure. Thank you. Councilman Henderson.
I don't have anything, Mayor Pro Tem. I do have a mosquito abatement committee meeting tomorrow, so I'll report on that next time.
Thank you. Councilman Coates?
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report tonight as well. Councilwoman?
I think I'll pass too with the time.
Okay. That brings us to the city manager report.
I'll yield my time in the interest of time as well. I've been enough of a pain tonight.
You what? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was 5 seconds, but we'll